Sandra all the time is here with the cold hard truth. She's the ears and the eyes for me and you. Every day, everyone want to hear from Sandra. And every time on the air, she's getting better. Tell your sister, tell your brother, tell your mama, call Sandra in the morning and in the evening. They always calling Sandra. And when they start fighting, they calling Sandra. And
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth. Welcome to another episode with more truth telling, more problem solving, and of course, more tea spilling than ever before. Sit back, students, grab your tea and turn up the volume because class is now in session. Call in at 936-2626 because your voice matters. Share your opinion on issues that matter the most to you. Good morning, K-Man. How is everybody doing this beautiful Friday morning? Hope you guys are doing well. Everybody okay? All right. Big good morning to Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, of course, Bobo 89.1. Got it locked in. I'm going to send out the links here to everyone on the WhatsApp channel as well. We've got a full candidate day here for you today so that we can learn a bit about our candidates and what they're bringing to the table. And specifically, we have Mr. Rolston Angin, who is going to be joining us. So we're going to just pull him in just a second here. Let me just grab all of our links first and make sure that everybody's tuned in before we say good morning to our special guests. So give me one quick second. We're going to get this this party, as we say, going here. All right, let's do a quick refresh for Facebook so that we can make sure that everybody has that link in particular. All right, so happy Friday. Can you believe this week is gone already? Wowee. My goodness, we're on the downside of the month of February already. And of course, we know February is a short month. So, yeah. Then we're looking at March and April 30th. That's it. We're going to be out there voting. Hard to believe. It's coming fast. So, right. All right. Everybody's got the links. Let me send it to a few groups. We'll send it to Washington Boulevard group, Windsor Park group, and of course, the Caymanians in Florida group. Now, do not forget, if you're one of those people who live overseas and you're still registered to vote and you're still eligible to vote, by all means, make sure you get your mail-in ballots in good time. So I did want to also just say as a precursor, and we won't get into too much details, but I'm sure most of you saw yesterday that we already had one candidate who has dropped out of the race. Josh Parsons has decided to drop out. And I think that's a very, very good decision. Knowing what we know about that situation and also what we said about character matters, some of you need to do some self-analysis before you even declare about whether or not there's maybe too many skeletons in the closet that have not been resolved. And so therefore, might be a good idea to sit it out. Leon Gold, are we going to hear any announcements from you coming up here shortly? Just curious. Let's do a quick good morning. Akil, good morning, joining us from Raleigh, North Carolina. We've got Irvelyn in the house, Miss Lucille joining us from the UK. Miss Susie, are you hearing me loud and clear? You should be hearing me pretty good. Wee Wee is here. Abby, good morning. Patricia Blake, good morning to you. Miss Yolene is also here. Paul joining us from Bermuda. AJ also joining us from Raleigh, North Carolina, saying happy Friday, everybody. Miss Linda says good morning to every person in the Cayman Islands. Have a great weekend. I'm so glad it's Friday. Yes, Linda. Carrie Tibbetts in the house. Good morning, Carrie. Says good morning from the Bluff. Perla is here. Marshall, Linda, Cornwall in the house as well. Shay, good morning to you. Marshall Forbes, we got two Marshalls in class today. Miss Pat, Miss Jean, and of course, Stephen joining us from the UK as well. So good morning, one, and good morning, all. And of course, Kim also says good morning to all. So nice to see so many beautiful faces. Morning, Miss Barbara G in class today. And let's go ahead and get class started because this is going to be a good one. So we've got none other than Mr. Rolston Angin joining us. Good morning, Rolston. How are you?
Sandra, I'm good. Very thankful. It's a great Friday. Good Friday to be alive. Good Friday to always be a Caymanian and be in the Cayman Islands. Sandra, isn't it beautiful to have such a wonderful country that we find it very important for us to contest free and fair elections because we have a country that's worth fighting for, Sandra.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, Rolston, thank you so much for coming on the program. We know that you have committed to ensuring that the people ahead of the 2025 general election, that the people have full access to you as a candidate. And I really appreciate that because I'm going to be honest, I'm really surprised by this, but it's not happening quite as much as I had thought that it would be. And so anyone who steps up to the plate and actually gets it done, I'm just pleased to see that because I know it takes a lot. I know that this isn't easy to come on this program and be subjected to questions that you don't know what's coming. And also, there's a level of preparation for you, obviously, that has to go into this process. So we appreciate you being willing to step up to the plate and just do it. So today we are going to talk about your manifesto, which you have completed. Now, do you have an electronic copy, Rolston, that you can pull up on the screen? I wonder if you have that handy by any chance. I don't think I told you this, but you can actually share documents on the screen as well.
Yes, you had mentioned that some time ago. We hadn't shared any documents recently,
Right.
but I do have a copy.
Okay. Have your
That is
team, let me
here.
see. I'm sure they're listening. So if they have a PDF copy, let me make it easy for you so that you don't get too distracted. If they'll send me a PDF of your manifesto, I can pull it up on the screen so that everybody can see it in class, and then we can kind of go through that. That's not a problem. I'll
Okay.
do it because I'm a little bit more used to doing it, and then
Okay.
it would be a distraction for you. Okay,
Perfect.
so yes, we have that capability. You know, we're high tech around here, folks. So we yeah, we like to make sure that everyone in class is able to see these things and they can fully participate and get their questions ready for sure. Miss Perla
Absolutely.
says she's drinking a cup of coffee with no sugar and a little bit of creamer, and she's ready for the rawness of the Friday segment. The Friday segment is known, I should say, for being a little bit harder than perhaps usual, and so most people are very, they anticipate the Friday section quite a bit. So yeah, so Rolston is going to be bringing it to you guys hard as it relates to his manifesto. So let me ask you a question, Rolston, while we wait on getting your electronic manifesto. Why did you decide to actually do a manifesto, put it in writing, and take the time to have it printed?
So, Sandra, this manifesto obviously is a culmination of my years of experience, not only as a legislator, but in the last 12 years as a private citizen in Cayman, and also my moving around our community and talking to Caymanians. In particular, since last October, I really focused in on just everywhere I went, West Bay North, all over Cayman, whoever I bumped into, obviously people were already starting to talk about politics, talking about the election, and just taking that time to listen very carefully to what people were saying, what people were seeing as the issues. And of course, we all can parrot a lot of issues. We all can say, well, immigration's an issue, housing an issue, cost of living is an issue, inclusion in our school system is an issue, education is an issue. But what do we do about those issues? And so as I moved around, I knew it was very, very important for me to actually document issues, but actually document what I saw as the solutions for those issues. And that has been a very collaborative approach. So not only have I spoken to literally dozens and dozens of Caymanians, then I used as the first draft. We had a very open and honest and frank discussion with myself and my election committee. And so my campaign committee is 28 people strong, right? So this is 28 Caymanians who actually helped me then really, really focus in on all of the solutions and test them, question me, say, well, do you really mean this? Do you really think can work? What would the cost of this be? And of course, the other key thing was having that amount of people look at the document, a lot of other ideas and solutions came up. Let me tell you, Sandra, this manifesto looks very, very different than the draft that I presented back in January to the committee. And so now we're 3 weeks into February, and we have been working on fine-tuning this now for well over a month. We've been actually working on ensuring that this document, we believe, in summary, is a good snapshot of our major issues, but sensible, practical, affordable solutions, approaches that I believe, if we follow these, will improve the lives of Caymanians, because that's what an election process should be about experienced people coming forward to offer themselves up for our great country and having real credible solutions. And I thought that there was no way I could go through an election campaign and not actually put it in writing and put it out there for that scrutiny. It's easy to just talk and have public meetings and yard meetings and just say things and have sweet nothings that you say to people that are good sound bites. versus actually putting a document together for everyone to see and everyone to be able to say, whether or not they think there's some good in there, what they think may be missing, maybe what should be some other inclusions that should be in the manifesto. And so that is why we've come forward now with this manifesto at this time. The other thing, Sandra, to pick up on one of the points that you were making, I was tempted to not reveal this for another month, right? I could have taken the easier route to present it closer to election day. But myself and the campaign committee said, you know what? Let us do what we should be doing, which is having open and frank discussion as Caymanians. Let's put this out early so that people can know where I stand on the issues. There'll be no questions about that. And also, the other very interesting thing is we have what we believe is using technology to allow us to get real feedback in a very efficient manner. And so I'm going to dive in sort of on one point on the manifesto that I think is critically important. On the inside back cover, we have a QR code. And so anyone can actually scan that QR code and actually send me feedback on the manifesto. And so I think that's crucially important. March 3rd is nomination day. That is when, God's willing, I will officially be nominated and be a candidate. And so as I move through this journey, I want to get that feedback because this document is a live document. And as we get feedback from the public, I'm going to update it because I want to ensure that the electronic version of this truly represents the broadest possible input from Caymanians. And so that after election day, once we're negotiating about how to form a government, I'm going to have in my back pocket what I believe truly represents the wishes of a broad cross-section of our community. And certainly at that point, I can feel like I've been sent with a real mandate, Sandra, because that's what a manifesto should be. It should be about the mandate that you are looking to be elected on. And so I can then stand up and truthfully say, here it is. I published this document. I went door to door through West Bay North. I've been elected. And here are the promises, the commitments that I've made to the people of West Bay North.
Very good. And of course, we have the QR code there. If anybody wants to go ahead and scan that to reach out to Rolston, they certainly can. Yeah. Wonderful. All right. So we're going to go through it this morning. And I like how you have said that this is a live and live-in document, because what that means, folks, and my understanding of it anyway, is that, listen, that means that it is subject to revision, as he has said. It is, not fixed. He's open to getting feedback. He is open to making necessary changes, et cetera, et cetera. We do have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Auntie Sandy, and good morning to Mr. Rolston Angin. This is Johan Moxham. How's it going, guys?
Morning, Johan.
Morning, Johan.
Rolston, really appreciate you being so candid and speaking to the people and sharing your views. I think this is like the third or fourth time I've seen you on, and all the best to you in the upcoming elections. And I don't even know what part of West Bay that is. What part of West Bay is it? West Bay
North.
West Bay North.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Quick question for you. Two questions. Are you affiliated with a team or are you running as an independent?
So I'm running as an independent, Johan, and I have obviously had discussions with a number of groups already, but I'm running as an independent.
All right. So as a corollary to that, given the fact that I don't think anybody will be able to form a majority of the teams out there that are available, you've got the PPM, who have an extremely weak slate of candidates and are unlikely to be able to form a majority. I think you've got the National Party led by Mr. Scott, and you've got what is the other one? TCCP, led by Mr. Ebanks. Of the three, which one would you most likely be willing to work with or align with should you be successful as the candidate for West Bay North? I'm driving in traffic, so I'll get off and just listen to you. Best of luck to you. Thanks a lot, everybody.
All right.
All right,
This is such an interesting question because I must tell you, Rolston, I certainly did not have this discussion with Johan, but up to last night, I was out walking my dog, and I was having a conversation with someone. Shaka Zulu says, wow, that's a loaded question. It is. It is definitely a loaded question because I was walking my dog and I was talking to someone about another candidate who's going to be coming out running as independent. And the person said to me, wow, really? Did they not get the memo? And I said, what memo? And they said the memo that came in at voters want people aligned. And so this is up to this morning as I was walking into the studio, I was going to put up, and I am going to put it up, a question in relation to this. And so the question, folks, because I'm curious to know how you guys are thinking about this going into the election. I think that all candidates may want to know as well. Are you minded? The question is this. Are you minded to say all things being equal as a registered voter? Are you more likely to vote for an independent or someone who is part of a party? So that's the question. I'm going to actually throw up the QR code here in a second, because I think from my perspective, I have a feeling that I think I know this answer, but maybe I don't. Maybe I've gotten it all wrong. So, and if you're not a registered voter, I'm going to ask you to obviously not participate in this poll. But as a registered voter, are you more likely to vote for an independent or someone who is a part of a party now? And as Johan said, there are several parties that have come about. So I guess, Rolston, what's your take on this?
Well, Sandra, I think the country has been very, very clear that the country does not want an independent-led government going forward. And so when I looked about how I was going to run, I looked around, and at that point, right, when I made the decision that I was going to contest the elections, which was last year, there was only one party in existence in Cayman at that point that was up and functional, and that was the Progressives. Now, in the last few weeks, we've had the Community Party and the National Party come about and be born. And am I naive enough to believe that the good people of Cayman are going to look on, and less than 6 months out from an election, you get two groups come out of the woodwork and say, oh, we're a party. And that automatically means that they're cemented in policy, they're cemented in relationships, and that they're going to last. Because saying that you're a party gives you anything more, and it does not mean you have a greater chance of success than not. And so from my perspective, given my background and given my experience, so I was part of creating a party in 2001. I was a backbench member, I was an opposition member, and I was then a minister in cabinet. And so I feel very, very strongly about the fact that I will be able to work and function with any group. And I think all of us will agree, and Johan alluded to this as well, that ultimately we don't believe the country is going to elect any particular group to get 10, because that's the number of group one single group will have to get to in order to form a majority. It's a minimum of 10 people. And so to answer Johan's question directly, no, I don't have any particular preference. Why? The people have to decide. The people of this country are going to go to the polls, and they're going to look and they're going to vote in every constituency on the strength of character and experience of the people who are contesting the elections. Do I believe that, and he mentioned that one particular party had weak candidates. Well, I think that I can say that if I look at, for example, the National Party, and I think at this point they've declared some 12 candidates. I cannot see in there where you can form anything called a credible government, where you can have 8 of those people who this country is going to look at and say, yep, We believe those 8 individuals can be ministers in cabinet and run this country from a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And so, because we all agree with the fact, and when I say all agree, I think the general consensus is that no one group is going to form a majority. I believe someone like myself, who is not a newbie, I'm a 3-term member, I run my track record as Minister of Education. I think people have been very clear about their support for me on that basis. And so I believe I'm going to be able to fit in with any group that is going to be elected. Because let's face it, we're not like the United States or United Kingdom where you're going to be able to look at parties and say, this party has 100+ years of being conservative. This party has 100+ years of being a Green Party. This party has 100+ years of being liberal. We're not steeped in that sort of policy divide in Cayman. And so for me, it's going to come down to who the people of this country elect and me being able to fit seamlessly within the framework of any of those groups. As I said, I've had a number of the groups call me up and had these discussions. And for me, that's what's getting ahead of myself. My focus is getting elected to represent the people of West Bay.
Well, the results are interesting so far. Let's take a few calls. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Morning. I thank you, Mr. Rolston, for your answer. I agree. I don't think there's going to be any one particular party that's going to get 10 or more elected members. So for me, it's about and manifestos aside, I don't see how manifestos can be much different because we all live in the same Cayman Islands and we all see and know what the issues are that need to be solved. Obviously, people may have ideas of how those things can be solved, but ideally, realistically, the manifestos can't be that different. So for me, I'm looking at the candidates almost as individuals because it's going to have to be a coalition government unless by some crazy happening, I don't see it happening that 10 or more from one group is going to get elected. So it's going to have to be a coalition government. So I am looking for people who are humble and can put their egos aside, people who aren't just vying for premier or deputy premier or even a minister position, but people that are humble, willing to work with other people for the betterment of Cayman, period.
So you're saying that what happened?
Let me finish. I think we need. I'm not saying we need all independents, but we need a few independents because we've seen what happened last election.
Well, that's what I was saying. They were more independents.
Well, the one independent that no one wanted to work with and that everyone said they wouldn't work with, they had to because he was in the best strategic position. They had to work with him to form the government. So I think that having 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 independents isn't a bad thing. I'm not against the party system either. But I think if you have a few independents who, like Mr. Rolston said, he's willing to work with other people to form the government and to do what's best for Cayman, I don't think that's a bad thing.
I couldn't agree with you more, caller, and that is exactly you. I wish I said it as eloquently as you just did, because I think you've painted the picture. I think spot on. That is exactly where we're at as a country, and so that is why I'm sitting in the position that I'm in, and so I feel very good about my track record of experience working for the people. You have to be a servant leader, and that's what you touched on as well. You have to be willing to serve the people of this country, and in doing so, be able to go to that parliament and be a part of effective leadership that changes, positive change for the Cayman Islands. And so I made sure that I opened with what I said, which is that I think it's very clear we can't have an independent-led government and 11 independent persons coming forward. But I do believe that we'll be able to form a much stronger coalition. A lot of lessons have been learned over the last 4 years. And I can assure your audience and yourself, Sandra, that I'm not going to be part of putting together any loose coalition that is extremely weak and is going to fall apart. So,
Mhm.
Sandra,
All
I don't know
right.
if you want to.
I've shared the QR link on the screen and the actual link in the chat as well. And Blackberry says the question really whether or not we're likely to vote for party versus independent, is rather loaded as well. I won't be voting for any one party, for example, but there are key individuals that belong to a party that I would consider voting for. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Morning, Sunday. Morning, my good friend Raleigh, and morning to the wider Cayman population.
Morning.
Morning.
Nice to hear your voice, Raleigh.
Good to hear you, Armand. Good to hear you.
Yeah. I think we're heading down maybe a little different road this time. Pay attention to what I'm saying as we discuss that, and I think it's in Raleigh's portfolio about the district councils. This island has a population approximately 80,000. No, they're not all voters, but they live on this island and they're controlled by the Cayman Islands. It is high time that people realize that everyone should have a say in what goes in and onto this island, not just the elected members. In district council is the way to go. You don't talk about your representative and you're going to ask them. You need to be a part of what takes place in this island. When you get the district council set up in this island that people will have a say, then we will be going in a different direction, because you don't just wait. It's like a cruise ship with 80,000 people and you only got a crew. We're going to double that, and hopefully that we will get through, because I know Roll is on board with it. So anybody, before you start your vote, ask your representative if they are into district council. If they're not, then you better think twice if you're going to vote for them. So Roll is on board big time, and I don't know about the rest of the politicians from East End to West Bay, but people must have a say in what goes on to this island. So I'll listen to Raleigh for the rest of the show, and good luck, and thank you so much for coming on and giving us, highlighting us on what's taking place. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much, Norman.
Thank you so much. We have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning.
Morning, dear.
Good, thanks. First time calling in, by the way.
Yes, thank you.
Bear with me.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I had a quick question for Mr. Angin. When he mentioned about, his successes in education, it kind of struck a nerve. And I wanted to find out if he would be more inclined to go back to the original curriculum where we had our grading system that's so much easier for our children to understand where they are, even for parents who didn't grow up with this new fancy grading system, in my opinion, is a bunch of garbage. But anyway, would he be more inclined to go back to, the A's and B's and C's to understand, so parents can help their kids and understand where they're actually at in schools? I know the teachers are trying to do their best at, breaking down the system or the report cards, but it's still never really that clear where exactly your child is at.
Thank you very much, caller. That is a crucial important question. So we beg parents to be involved with their child's journey. We accept, every one of us accept, that our children should be at the core of our education system, and the more involvement we can get from parents increases the odds that a child is going to be successful in school. You're quite right. We have gone with a very qualitative approach to how we assess our children to try to give parents more feedback. But at the end of high school, it still comes down to whether you're going to get a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4 on a CXC, an ABC on a GCSE. And so I personally believe that our report cards should have both. You should say where your child is at what grade is your child operating at, including then the detailed qualitative analysis to try and help parents understand how they can support their children to improve on their grades. So the two need to go hand in hand. And yes, I would be 100% in favor of ensuring that we add back that important column where a parent knows where their children, what level their child is operating at.
Yes, because I think for the vast majority of parents, they understand A, B, C, and D easier than what they're saying now about, the greater depth and working towards and all that. Like working towards what? Like what working towards is such a broad, I guess, statement or a grade to say, like how close towards greater depth or how far from greater depth my child is at. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't quite get that system. And my oldest child is 10. So I've been in the system for quite some time and I am very involved, but it's still not very, I guess, good for parents or easy for parents to quite understand exactly where we are.
Yes. And so, no, I Sandra and caller, I agree with you 110%. And we need to offer, the system needs to offer that little bit more clarity, just so we can ensure that parents are able to then really focus in and hone in on what improvements need to happen, how you can support your child better by knowing in a much clearer, more precise way what level your child is at. So I agree 110%.
And forgive me, I have one more question before I go. Or would you be more inclined to add some of the, I guess, what you would call life skills, subjects in terms of like finance and teaching kids about money management on a different level and just instead of like, just teaching them what money is, just certain politics or from an early age, understanding how the country operates, what you put in is what you get out, that sort of stuff, like would, important life skills, in my opinion, when they reach adulthood.
Yes.
Because you have children coming out of school, who are 18, able to register to vote, but they don't have the slightest clue or the slightest idea of what they're doing. So they're going to go with status quo or whatever their mom tells them to do, or maybe some other elder in the community tells them to do, but is that really in their best interest? Do they understand that? So yes. I think these things, we need to start teaching them from an early age. Like my kids, we teach them about liabilities and assets from very young. So they're not going to hopefully not go straight out of high school and go and buy a car, but might want to invest, in stocks or something.
Right. Okay. That's a wonderful question. And on page 10 of the manifesto, you'll see that I've stated that I want to develop a reception to year 12 character education curriculum, and that will encapsulate civics. And so that curriculum would run throughout the breadth and the length of everyone's journey through the system. I believe it's been proven in numerous education systems that adding these sort of life skills and this sort of knowledge not only helps the person as they transition to adulthood out of the school system, but as you quite rightly said, it makes them much more responsible citizens, critical thinkers about what's happening around them, so that they can be able to make the types of life choices that will benefit them long term. And so that they will be able to then, as you said, get to the point where an election is coming around and they're going to demand a manifesto. They're going to demand to hear from a candidate specifically, here's what I'm doing, not just mom or dad saying, oh, he's a good guy or she's a good lady, but knowing that they have plans and have a track record of experience to be able to deliver on what those promises are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thanks
Thank you very much. Those are very,
So-
very good questions, Sandra.
Yes, and congrats for being a first-time caller to the
That's right.
program. So
No, she hit on critically important points in our system, and so I'm glad that I was afforded that opportunity to answer those sorts of questions.
yeah, so some very interesting and good responses as people think about who they're going to be voting for. One person said leadership is key, so for them, it does come down to that. That channel, yes, says who else is even running in West Bay North? We should know all candidates by now. And the fact that you don't know them all, despite my best efforts to get them to engage, at this point in the game, that no longer becomes my problem, because that means, quite frankly, that channel, yes, that they are failing in their ability to reach you, the people. And that's not my job. So I'm gonna have
my job is to come on here, Sandra, and face the public,
right.
Be very open and honest and frank
That's right.
about who I am, what my experiences are, and why I should be the member for West Bay North. That's my job. And at the end of the day,
and my job is to facilitate the people who are willing to face you, the voters. So Rolston, some interesting results. Continue to vote, folks. I'm going to just put it to the side for a second as we pull back up Rolston's manifesto. And again, you can scan his QR code. And let me just show you guys something, because at this stage of the game, it is important the degree of work that you are willing to put into this, because in my honest opinion, it demonstrates how committed you are to the job. So when I see someone who's taking the time to put together how many pages we got here, Raleigh? 27-page manifesto that isn't just pictures and big words, right? But has thought about a number of different issues. We're going to go through the manifesto here in part this morning, and has come up with actual, we'll look at the details, but I just want to show you guys, this isn't fluff, folks. This is someone who's saying, I've thought about this. I've thought about immigration reform. And these are some of the concrete recommendations that I have for immigration reform. Quite frankly, this is the kind of candidate that I want to see more of, someone who's willing to sit down and put in the hard work. The most interesting thing is I'm hearing that in other circles, there are candidates and groups who are saying that they're not going to put out a manifesto because they don't want people stealing their ideas. Can you imagine? First of all, let me be very, very clear here. There are very few original ideas as such, but the ability to be able to coherently put your ideas down, take pen to paper, think it through, put it down, look at the possibilities, maybe even pull back a little bit and say, I can see the pros and cons of this. Let me find a more medium ground on my suggestion and tweak it so that it fits for the majority of people in terms of a resolution. That's important. It's easy to sit back and say you're not going to think and you're not going to put together a manifesto because you don't want people stealing your ideas. You're here, you're putting yourself forward to benefit the people of this country, right? This isn't about stealing ideas. There are very few original ideas out there. It's about how you articulate what your position is and where you stand for, so that the people can be educated enough to know that going into the election. So if you've not bothered to do a manifesto, and we don't know what your positions are in these key and important issues, how do you expect the people to go to the polls on April the 30th and cast a vote in your favor? That's a question I have. I'm so confused by that. Voyager has a question. If you can answer also my question. I don't actually see your question. Pat says critical thinking must be introduced and taught to your children from an early age. Voyager, let me see if I can scroll back a little bit. Lavana says a lot of life skills and learning should also come from the parents. But what happens, Lavana, when the parents themselves don't have the necessary skills to do that? That's where the system has to pick up the slack, because trust me, if they don't, in education, they're going to pick up the slack in the courts and in prison.
Yes.
And so I think that you have to recognize, unfortunately, that a lot of parents don't have that ability. That channel, yes, says quantitative would be the grade itself, and qualitative is the personal comments on each child. Morning to Miss Alita. Voyager, I'm sorry, I don't see your question. I've scrolled back quite a bit. So, Oh, is it this one? What happens if the party that has the most elected members to parliament ask him to join to make the government and they do not support his proposals in his manifesto? Would he still join?
So that's an excellent question. On the heels of the election, obviously, we're all going to have to work together to form a government. And so for me, there are going to be some key proposals that I'm going to have that I am going to push. Now, as Sandra just said, as you just said, Sandra, not only do I have to continue going door to door, get electronic feedback through the QR code to continue to refine the positions that I've put forward at this particular point, but then I have to work with others to bring these solutions to fruition. And so certainly I'm going to have to be flexible and open. Now, if there are points that I've put forward that I feel very strongly about, and I can't find support within any group to be able to put them forward, well, then at that point, I know that I have to fight the battle. You have to pick your battles and fight on. But I will be very, very clear and candid and upfront. And this is another reason why I feel it's important for me in particular in this election to run as an independent, because whilst I can be a part of a government, that does not mean that I can't speak very openly and candidly about my position on a range of topics and issues while still supporting and being held to account within my government through collective responsibility. Those two things can coincide. People somehow try to fool the public into believing that, no, you can't have that sort of flexibility. It comes down to strength of character, being upfront, open, and honest about your position as a person that wants to serve the public. And so any of these ideas that I wouldn't be able to get through with a majority group, I'm not going to abandon those. I'm certainly going to continue to fight for those. And certainly in the next 4 years, one of the things that I've committed to my committee, and in my first area meeting, and my second one is tomorrow night, that I was asked this same question that I've committed to the public, is that once we form a government, I'm then going to have to look on and say, is this a group that I would want to be a part of permanently? If the answer is yes, we join them and we try to build out the party nationally. If not, then I have to find like-minded individuals, and that will then be part of my job for the next 4 years. Getting elected is not easy. It should not be easy. The work of a parliamentarian should not be easy. And so that piece of it, in terms of greater organization, I can assure all the audience that I will be working toward. That's for sure.
All right. So Stephen has a question, but let's take the caller first. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning, Miss Sandra.
Morning, dear.
Yeah, Mr. Ross, good morning. I was saying, right,
good morning.
A scenario like this. You got 3 wins from TCP, you got 3 wins from Dan, and you got 3 wins from PPM. That would be 9. And you got 10 independents wins. The 10 independents could have formed the government and the parties canceled.
Yeah. Well, I think let me say this, caller, based on how we see things shaping up, that scenario is actually the least likely to happen, because there are most people who are running this time are running as part of a party. So you don't have a huge selection of individuals who are running as independents to begin with. So I think you have to look at the numbers. And this is where I suppose from a strategic perspective, the parties would be looking to onboard as many candidates as possible. So right now we're saying, well, there's no party that's going to get a majority. Well, we don't know what they might be able to do between now and nomination day. So if they have, 18, 19 people, if they're willing or able to get a full slate of candidates, they could get 10 out of 19, because that's only about 50%, right? So it depends on what else is going to happen. So there are some question marks, but I don't think the scenario that you put forward is likely to happen, because even the strong independents, such as, for example, Kenneth, we know that he's in talks with PPM because he thinks the way to go in this election is not as an independent candidate because of the feedback, but instead to go with a party. And even, Priscilla is saying this. And we know that part of this is the parties are also, some of the party members have recognized this being part of the past PAC administration and what happened there because they were not a proper party. She's saying independence caused the chaos over the past 4 years. That's partially true, but they also had outside forces who were party members, by the way, who were causing the chaos in their own group. because they were trying to tear them apart based on this exact same position that don't go for independence, go for parties. So I think people need to recognize the reality of the games that are often played in politics and some of the things that are happening behind the scenes as well.
But the real reason why the candidates prefer the party, is because everything is pre-selected. So, for instance, if PPM win, we automatically know that the premier is going to be GOU, and the deputy part of the party is going to be the deputy premier. That's automatically fact. So the party system is like a pre-selection already. You remember back in the days in politics when all members win, say the 19 members win, and if all them independent, all them had to put a ballot to vote for the premier. All them put a ballot and vote for the deputy premier. So the reason why the party politics is a more pre-selected, and once you got a party, we could already know, we can already logically analyze from each party who gonna be minister and what minister and get based on the profession. For instance, you see, you got a PPM. Obviously, if Joey win back, we don't know. He more likely to take the minister of planning and housing with the premiership. You don't know if the TCHT win. We know Andre gonna be the premier. We automatically know he gonna go for the minister that he left, the ministry he left before. So a lot of things are already pre-selected. You see what I'm saying? You remember back in the days we had EXCO, that executive member come to back in the days, them times there, everybody had to write a ballot. Who we gonna make the premier? Bam, 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 vote. So it's like
they did that internally. So to be clear, the voters have never had any say.
The premier could be internally. They have to vote to the ballot to get to the speaker.
No, let me, Sandra, we have to clarify some points here because
hold on. Yeah.
Let me make this very clear. I ran in 2000, I got elected.
Right.
And in 2000, I ran as part of a team.
Yes.
And we then formed a coalition with another group to form the government. That coalition lasted approximately 12 months. And out of that was born two parties, the United Democratic Party and the People's Progressive Movement.
So even your coalition back in 2000 fell apart?
Yes. And so 2005,
Forgot
2009, 2013, and 2017, 4 consecutive elections, we had the government led either by a party winning the majority in 2009 and 2005 and in 2009. The Progressives won in 2005. We won in 2009, and that's when I became a minister. By 2013 and 17, we had a Progressives-led coalition. And so those good old days of just loose teams were things of the 90s, 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? And so at this stage, am I saying, and let me make sure I'm very clear about my prior comment. I recognize, having been a part of a party, that once elected, God's willing, on April 30th, that I am going to be looking for my permanent political home to be a part of a party going forward. What was very clear to me when I was making my decision to run is that there was only one party in existence at that time. 12 months ago, let's not recreate history, Caymanians. 12 months ago, there was one party in this country, the Progressives. We have two parties that have been formed in the last few months. I personally did not find any feedback in West Bay North of people saying to me, and I had to follow my political gut, to go and just join a party for joining a party's sake, not knowing whether it would last, because parties can fall apart as well. Because you're a party and just forming 6 months before an election, that does not give you any track record to say that you're going to be an effective administrator.
I mean, look at the UDP. They eventually fall apart. They're not around anymore.
And so that is where we're at, as far as I can see, and what the feedback I've gotten on the ground, Sandra. That's the most important thing. Is people look on, they've accepted that I have the experience to be able to contribute positively with any group that is going to be elected. I'm going to be very, very clear. I am not going to come on this show or anywhere else, Sandra, and start saying, oh, I favor this one or favor that one. The public have to decide on who they believe are the best candidates in each of the constituencies. And at that point, we form a solid government to govern. The mistakes and the outflight influences that were allowed to bring down 2 administrations in the last 4 years, I think it's very clear to me, certainly, when I talk to the current persons who are offering themselves up for candidacy, they recognize the mistakes they were made. They recognize the outside influences that they allowed to get into their government and cause it to fall apart. So let me be clear, public. Let's not assume or just say that it was just those persons who caused the chaos. There was a lot of outside forces that was causing a lot of chaos, causing a lot of rifts. And so now it's time for us to get back to mature governance. And I agree with the caller. Ultimately, I am going to, God's willing, be a part of something permanent. I just didn't feel like using an election to do that.
Not wrong, Mr. Ross. At least one thing about you open. So I bet. So basically, if you do get in the government, you are one Minister of Education, right?
Well, certainly there's been a lot of work there that I started that has not been continued for the last 12 years.
Right? So why want Ms. Sandra to challenge each party, and make them get the idea if they do win majority seats, who in their party, which ministry they would probably give them or whatever, so we can get an idea what's going on more in depth.
Yeah.
So everybody saying that no one party gonna get all the votes. We could agree, to disagree.
But let me ask you a question, caller.
We can still have an idea. So who gonna be, if your party do win, who gonna be the Minister of Finance? Who gonna be the Minister of Education? If they do win, we get some more feedback how they can detonate.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, caller. I can't even convince them to come on this show. So how do you think I would be able to convince them to answer that question?
Well, that's true. I mean,
I'm just saying. I'm not trying to be.
I can be honest to you. If they're not working with your show, I can tell you this. And if they know social media in marketing, you spreading right across the island without these days change, election change. If you see how Donald Trump mashed up the whole world with media and things, so if they're not working with you, they're in problem. So they got how bite their lip, spend their money, come on your show, and you just keep it professional. They keep it professional, and they dictate, and you ask questions and keep us informed. But if they're not aligning with you, who you reaching out to the people, they're in problem. If they're going Radio Cayman, I watch Radio Cayman. What I see 36 watchers. I said, Jesus, please, I waste of time. I can tell you that. I look over there what they are. Yeah,
Sandra, there's an endorsement for you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, caller. That was a very good call. Some very, very good points.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let's get into. We've added another question to the poll question. So by all means, please go. We've added one that just basically says whoever you think is best. I guess some people wanted that, so we put that on there. But let's go ahead and move on to looking at Rolston's manifesto. That's the primary reason that he's here today. So, Rolston, can we start? Tell me where in your manifesto we're going to begin and why you want to begin at that particular spot in the manifesto.
Well, Sandra, personally, I want to start with the very first topic that's in the manifesto, and that's immigration reform. Whilst we have a large number of issues, and you can see the issues here and how I've broken them down. Obviously, there's no monopoly on how to break down issues in Cayman, but that's how myself and my committee sought to break down the manifesto. We felt like immigration cuts across so many other issues. It cuts across housing. It cuts across cost of living. It absolutely cuts across education because of the overcrowding we're seeing in public schools because of the number of non-Caymanians who have gone from the private sector into the public sector. Mr. Ormond quite rightly talked about district councils and how we improve our governance. And you'll see that I have a concrete proposal, not giving lip service to it. The legislation we know right now needs amendment. We know the legislation around advisory councils is very weak, but this is, in my mind, a good starting point as to what a district council should look like and what your constituency office, in conjunction with your council, should be doing. Because if we have this sort of governance model, you're going to find not only greater connectivity between a member of parliament and the public, but you're going to find greater performance. I believe in creating systems, just as you do in the private sector. You create systems that create efficiencies. And I think this district council model does just that. It really drives the process of inclusion of voters and given voters a very important voice in the inner workings of the constituency and how you actually get things done for people, because that's a key part of this. How do you get things done for people? Being in the legislative assembly is critically important in terms of legislative framework and what we're going to do. If you're blessed enough to be in cabinet and be responsible for a portfolio and administering the day-to-day running of the country, that's fine. But where the rubber meets the road is we have to have real service at the constituency level. You must serve before you expect to be a leader. And that's been my approach to leadership all of my life. How we support our families, how we ensure that inclusion isn't just one of those fanciful things and fanciful words. I've given specific policies that I had started from before and new policies that have to drive how we are inclusive for those who have special or other or educational and needs in the economy. Because they will, all of all the people we're talking about who go through the Sunrise Adult Training Center, they mean something. Their lives matter, and they are very often a voice that's underrepresented. And so then, of course, we talk about conservation and what I propose to do in regards to Barkers. Infrastructure is always going to be a critical issue as to how we grow our country and how government participates in that growth. And then I have a number of other policies. But immigration is where I would want to start, Sandra. And so I don't know what you want, if you want to ask me some questions, or if you want us to go right into the reforms that I'm proposing.
Yes, absolutely. Dina, in agreement with you here. So yeah, let's have a look at exactly what it is that you're proposing. I think you've laid out your case, succinctly enough, where we know why you think immigration is perhaps the single most important issue facing the Cayman Islands. So let's look at now what some of your key suggestions are in terms of policy that can be found in the referendum.
So first of all, Sandra, I've had this. There's been this vexing issue for a long time about who a Caymanian is, and a lot of Caymanians have felt very disenfranchised because our legislative framework doesn't specifically carve out who a Caymanian is. And so I'm proposing that we're going to have two definitions. One would be a generational Caymanian, and that term would be defined in law as a person whose parents were Caymanian, parents and grandparents were Caymanian at the time of their birth, and all of the persons would then be status holders. That's a very simple definition. I think that is something that a lot of Caymanians have felt very strongly about. In regards to other key policy provisions, the very first one is instituting a hard rollover policy, getting back to having a hard fixed term rollover policy in this country of 7 years. That is, you can come here and you can work, but you will not go beyond that point unless you're given a very specific and limited exemption in the business staffing plan as a key employee. And that would be very narrowly defined in regards to persons who would get that designation. And so why do we need a rollover policy? We need a rollover policy, Sandra, because in the last decade, we went from having a rollover policy in the law in 2004 to having it whittled away to the point that everyone now gets through the system. And the system was supposed to be so efficient that it was going to hear applications for permanent residency on an efficient manner, and that the board would then make a decision, and those who were unsuccessful would then be rolled over by having their permanent residency application declined. That has been an abysmal failure. We're now back 2 decades after having immigration reform in this country. We're now back to having the same mess that we had when I first got elected. Thousands of applications unheard, thousands of applications needing to be heard, and with each passing day, a ticking time bomb of having persons who can legitimately put their hand up and say, well, I put my application in at year 8, and now I'm at year 10. I still haven't heard, and the courts looming in the background for a lawsuit to say, hold up, the person has now been 10 years, 11 years, 12 years in Cayman, how can you legitimately now say that you're not going to grant them permanent residency? And so because of the backlog, we are going to continue to have this mess of having our population growth out of control. And so we have to have a rollover in place. That is the only way to do it. We have proven going the other way gets us right back to the same mess that we had 2 decades ago, Sandra. The second point that I'm proposing is that if there's going to be a permanent residency in the future, but we'll get to that in a minute, and permanent residency by tenure, that is by the length of time you've been in Cayman, that certainly if there's going to be an point system, that we immediately deal with this whole issue of the $500,000 investment. What was introduced into legislation a few years ago was that in the point system, anyone investing $500,000 in Cayman, either in a business or in property, etc., were automatically granted 30 points. So guess what happened, Sandra? People looking on who knew that they were going to apply for permanent residency looked at that and said, aha, if I'm going to get that significant a number of points, let me go out and buy real estate. Because remember, all you had to do was buy the real estate. You didn't have to prove if you were of value to the community, if you were a good person. It said nothing about how you treated Caymanians on the job, nothing. You simply had to buy and look at the level that you had to buy at. And so what I have been told by a number of very, very reliable sources in real estate firms is that their demand, in other words, the number of people that they have on a wait list trying to get homes somewhere in that $450,000 to $600,000 free price range, the vast majority are non-Caymanians who are trying to acquire a piece of property to get 30 points for permanent resident, to qualify for permanent residency. What has that done? That has driven up the price of housing. It has flat out been the single biggest contributor to the housing spike that we've seen, because supply has completely outstripped demand. So we literally have thousands of foreign workers here who look on and say, aha, my quickest and easiest route to permanent residency is to get 30 points by investing in a property, either going to a church or participating in some other charity and getting an additional 20 points, and you're well on your way to getting permanent residency. And so I'm proposing that at maximum, if we keep this provision, you'd get 5 points, because that takes the incentive out of just going and rushing to get a piece of land speculatively, but knowing that there's now a personal investment for those valuable 30 points. I'm also proposing that we have a new and a first-time real social integration stipulation. And what do I mean by that? We would want to ensure that there's a mandatory, this is Cayman, know and respect who we are policy embedded in legislation. And so just as you have to submit a work permit and you yourself and the employer have to sign off on it, in the future, you will have to submit along with your employer that you have read through our Know Cayman, know and respect who we are, and that you understand that you are now in the Cayman Islands and this is how we do things. Because I come from the very, very simple train of thought. If you don't like Cayman and Caymanians, then perhaps Cayman is not a place for you. Right? This whole business of we should be having open arms and completely watering down our own culture and our own standards purely because we want to be accepting. I think the Cayman Islands have been way more accepting than any other place on earth. Where else can you have 80,000 people, 100 plus nationalities, and having had our permanent population base grow at the rate it's grown over the last decade? You will not find that anywhere else on the planet. So we have proven, we don't need to now be told, oh, well, you know what? Tread lightly, go a little easier on that sort of stuff, Rolston. No, I think it's very important. it's very important for us to demand that anyone who's coming here understands that we mean business and you're going to respect this country and you're going to respect our people.
Yeah.
Because for too long, we've just not done it. Another key policy is ensuring that we develop a quota system for work permit categories. This one, Sandra, is one of the important policy positions that I'm proposing.
Mhm.
And so, just as I've spoken on your show about the need to develop SIFEC and ensure that we have our national trade school framework bedded down at SIFEC and implemented, and we are able to provide pathways for Caymanians from school to jobs, we then have to ensure that we take away the opportunity for employers to simply then not hire Caymanians. Because if we can then get the data and know that we're training up Caymanians in various areas of the economy, and let's just use the one that I like to beat up on the most, heavy equipment operators, right? If in the next 3 or 4 years, we roll out a solid program on how to get young men and young women who are interested in that area skilled up and trained to be able to be backhoe operators and to run dump trucks, etc. And we know that we have the cadre of Caymanians available, we can then set that quota at 0. Because if we set that quota at 0, that means you cannot get a work permit in that category. And so I've heard people, this is one of my solutions for what people have called for, quote unquote, jobs for Caymanians. I personally believe that the better solution is to have our job market managed by a very strong quota system where we ensure that we do not have rated access to work permits so that Caymanians continue to be marginalized and disenfranchised in areas where we have Caymanians who are ready, willing, and able and trained up to take up positions in our economy.
All right. We do have a caller in the line this morning. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Angin, as the law currently stands, what would be the legal distinction between the term generational Caymanian and status holder? And what would that distinction be after the law is amended as you envision it could be?
So the distinction would be in the definitions section. We would replace what Caymanian is defined as with the term generational Caymanian, and that would be a person who had a Caymanian parent or grandparent at the time of their birth. All other persons, the definition would be you're a status holder.
But the definition of a Caymanian is that you are a status holder. So what are you changing the status of a Caymanian to if it's not status? What would the status be?
Generational. Let me repeat, because I think maybe I'm getting lost in translation.
I heard the nomenclature.
Okay. If you define it in law, it's not nomenclature. It's then a legal definition. It's in the act.
I agree it's a legal definition, but does it have a legal difference in meaning?
Yes, it has a legal difference. The legal difference is anyone that's a generational Caymanian at the time of their birth had a parent or grandparent who was a Caymanian. If you don't have either of those, then you acquire status, and you are referred to in our immigration law as a status holder.
Okay,
Sandra, I don't know how I can be any clearer on that point.
Well, the distinctions that I'm hearing you say there, I think already exist in law.
But they're not defined in law, and they're not defined the way that Caymanians want them to be defined. I am going on the feedback that I've gotten over the years and by walking the streets of this country.
Okay. But what I'm saying is that the way the law currently sits is that what you're describing as a generational Caymanian is a Caymanian by right. And what you're describing as a status holder is a Caymanian by grant.
Correct. And those would be the two new definitions going forward.
Okay. So you're just changing the name of
that's what people want. People want a name in the law. People have said, look, we're tired of not being named specifically in our immigration regime.
And so my question is, what does that in effect, what would that change in name do in terms of the rights and perhaps responsibilities of each of those categories? So how would a generational Caymanian, if you define it as that, differ from someone who gets Caymanian, gets to being a Caymanian or Caymanian status holder? Is there going to be any difference in the things that they will have access to, the services, the things that they can do?
There wouldn't be a lot of changes, but people have said very, very clearly they want to be acknowledged in legislation. That has just been a point that Caymanians have cried out for. And everywhere I went, people are like, who are we? And so...
Well, I think that, and this is where I think you have to kind of know what it is that people, they might say that that's what they want, but they think that that's what they want because they want to see a real change at the end of the day, where generational Caymanians are somehow going to be getting preference or treated differently than someone who acquires it by status. So you're not saying that that part of the law is going to change. You're just saying that the name.
No, there's some other points. There's some other points later on in my manifesto that does have certain privileges for generational Caymanians.
Yes, thank you so much.
I'll listen to the balance of your contribution.
Yes, thank you. And I think, again, this is why it's great for, a candidate to come on here and say, as he mentioned in the beginning, this is a living, breathing document. He puts forward a position, and then, callers call in and say, I'm not quite understanding what that means or how that's going to make a significant difference. And we get to the meat and potatoes of the matter. So we do have a commenter that has come in and said the following. I don't know why the government data office doesn't just map the predicted impact of the proposed immigration reforms on the workforce. That's what this person contributes. They go on to say, and also automate the application and approval system with AI and human supervision. That's what the states do. AI does it all. Issues solved. I need to advise them until we are working with private sector to train Caymanians in the skills they need efficiently without spending all of the education budget sending students overseas to study and not coming back. We can't reduce the reliance on expats, and as industry will also be impacted. Two-phase attack, invest in on-island training, set up think tanks with public and private sector, predict job growth, train Caymanians properly, and then you can reduce the reliance on expats and industry thrives.
Absolutely, Sandra.
And by the way, that contribution was from an expat. So there you
go. And Sandra, that ties right into what I've talked about on this show, over the last couple of months, which is how do we tie SciFec? How do we tie our scholarship regime into a national manpower database where every person in this country eventually gets registered, and we ensure that every company, once you have a trade and business license, you will be given a login and you have to register all your jobs. There can be nothing more frustrating in this country than to not have a full bird's eye view of what our economy, our labor force actually looks like. And it is at that point that we are going to be able to start connecting students to jobs before they graduate. Young students should not be coming back from university and graduating in June or in July, and in August are sending out resumes, right? We should be having connections to workplaces, well before they graduate. But right now, the system is simply not giving the private sector the information that they absolutely need to plan their own companies. On top of that, I'm also proposing that we move back to a national service requirement. One of the things that we did was 2+ decades ago, we had a system where all persons on government scholarships were bonded. the feeling was that that was artificially growing the civil service because the civil service was being forced to find jobs, even if a job didn't exist. And so the decision was then taken to remove that criteria altogether. But what has now happened in the private sector, in the public sector, from the data that I've received, is that Caymanians coming back from university can't even get a job in government, yet government is continuing to grow and growing mainly by hiring foreign nationals. So I think all persons on government scholarship who do not already have a connection to a private sector job, in my proposal, would be designated as being a person eligible for national service, for service in the public sector. And then the core government and all SAGCs would obviously have access to this. And so their HR departments would be able to plan effectively because they would know which Caymanians are coming back. The same thing would apply with students who are enrolled at SciFec. At SciFec, you would then be able to have students, not be able, it would be demanded that every child at SciFec would have a pathway, and their individual pathway would typically be done through an apprenticeship. And so their apprenticeship, they would be going to school in the day, so government would be fully funding the course. So employers wouldn't be asked to pick up the tab for any of these courses. The government would be funding their courses up to age 18. And that would then have young people being truly connected, not just going out on some wishy-washy work experience as exists right now, because that's not getting us anywhere, Sandra. We need to have real commitment. That's why the quota system is going to be so important, because if you go to the restaurant establishments, for example, and hotels, and you have, let's pick a number, 100 Caymanians out doing server duties, you say to those industries straight up, here's the number of Caymanians that's out there. If they're not hired, the quotas get set to 0. We have proven through history that this system of choice has equated to way too many companies. I'm going to say all, but way too many companies and our own government preferring to hire foreign nationals over Caymanians. Plain and simple. And if the immigration system is not going to remove that choice, then we're going to be talking about this issue and being vexed about it and seeing Caymanians not returning from scholarships, Caymanians being marginalized in the workforce, and therefore we're solving the issue that we really need to solve, which is getting Caymanians into good paying jobs so that we can recreate our middle class, which has been completely decimated over the last decade.
All right, we do have several callers on the line. The one ending in 1181, I believe. You're first.
Hi, good morning, Sandra. Good morning, Cayman, and certainly good morning, Rolston. Marva Reed here, and I'm calling. Morning. I am calling to certainly endorse and to support. Make it known publicly that I endorse and I support Rolston. Having had the opportunity working in the schools when Rolston was then the education minister, and I am proud to say that from then until now, Rolston has been, for over that period, the best education minister we had in our system. There was a clear plan for education. He did excellent for us, and I look forward to him getting back into that position because it has been broken down tremendously, but I do feel it is fixable. So Rolston, I do look forward to that. But I have a question for you in regards to, you were talking about changes in laws or the immigration reform and stuff like that. There is something right now that our young people go through and have been going through, and I don't know if this started under your tenure when you were in government or later on, whereby in order for them, you know, to receive scholarships, etc., they have to go and apply for this certificate to be proven that they are, or they have the rights of Caymanian, etc. I can't even remember what it's actually called. Because to me, it's quite embarrassing, where all 4 of my children had to go through it. 3 of them being on government scholarships, but you have to do what you have to do because they've earned that. But, you know, the last time that with my last daughter that I went through it, every time you go, it's different changes. And even though they have all of these requirements, half of the requirements is still not stated. It's a headache. That's the bottom line. It's a headache. Wanted to know if that's going to still be there or if that's going to be removed. And another thing is in regards to young Caymanians, that government are educating them by sending them away, getting them educated, giving them those scholarships and bringing them back. I am hoping that this upcoming year, there are 3 young Caymanian girls that came back fully qualified last year to be hired into the government system. And they applied. I can assure you they applied because I fought for one in particular. And those 3 young ladies were all hired by private schools who fought for them too, because they needed, the demand was there. But I am hoping that they be given, and I told all 3 of them, do not give up, because there's an election year next year, and hopefully you guys will be where you want to be, because they want to be in the government system. And like I said, you know, government educated them. Why not bring them back and put them in the system to work in our primary schools? I'm going to continue listening to the show, but thank you so much. And I'm proud of you and glad that you're back on the road.
Thank you so much, Colin.
Thank you very much. Well, one of the things that my proposal is going to seek to do is to work very closely, not just with immigration, but with also the general registry, because the way to get around that issue is at birth, ensure that we start to delineate exactly who a generational Caymanian is, a Caymanian as of right, which the 2 callers ago mentioned. And so right now, because on a birth certificate it isn't designated, we then have to call this quite right. I had to do the same thing with 3 of my daughters as well, is you have to then write to the immigration department or work and get them to write you an acknowledgement letter. And she is quite right that it does feel, and it is embarrassing as a Caymanian, a generational Caymanian, to have to do that. And so that would be one of the next practical applications of this change in designation that I'm proposing, is that we work very closely with the registrar so that we are designating generational Caymanians from birth, and they wouldn't have to do that when they then apply for a government scholarship. That is certainly how I'm envisioning it working in my mind.
All right, we have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, hi. Morning, Sandra.
Morning, dear.
Yeah, hi, morning. And morning, Rolston.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Rolston, as discussing the immigration issue and our youth, currently right now and for too long, persons who are interested in attaining Cayman status simply just had to walk dogs and they get credits or points, clean up beaches and they get credits or points. And I think there's a huge gap, tremendous gap, with the needs of our youth, our troubled youth. I'm focusing on troubled youth and the needs of the elderly. And I've proposed before, especially now coming up to this election term, that I would like to hear from all candidates, including yourself, that you will commit to addressing restructuring that credit program where persons can attain Cayman status simply by walking dogs, but yet our children are suffering to get scholarship opportunities, training, exposure. And it's a gap where we are allowing our most vulnerable, our elderly, you know, for example, those Meals on Wheels programs. This is great, but just to go and to drop off a meal with someone and say thank you, goodbye, there's a wasted opportunity where relationships to be built, followed, measured, and development would result of an integration, assimilation with our foreign base, with our local base, And I think hence following that would be an appreciation for our culture and our people when relationships are developed. So please, I would like to hear you commit to that.
Yeah, can I just clarify? You're saying that instead of relying on foreign people to walk our dogs and do this volunteer work, you'd like to see more Caymanians involved in that?
No, Sandra. I'm talking about those who are seeking to get Cayman status.
Yes.
Are the ones who are simply taking what I view as an easy way in, and our people are suffering, meaning our people, I'm focusing on our youth and our elderly. And there's a lack of integration and assimilation simply by, there's other ways that they do these things, but I think we're not seizing opportunities where we can, by compulsory, measurable opportunities, to cause applicants for the Cayman status to build new relationships. For example, quickly, I know there's other callers, but quickly, some form of an adoption program where I'm an adopt, I'm a lawyer, I'm an engineer, I'm whatever I am. I now have to adopt a youth. And for the foreseeable 3 years, I would say at a minimum of 3 years, and you're going to lay out what you plan to do, how you plan to counsel, coach, encourage, steward this particular youth. Yeah? And over say every quarter, that the person submits reports, what they've done, how they invested in the youth, what they've done, and make it something that's measurable, that the youth and its family has an opportunity to greater opportunities in exposing themselves to things that they may not have currently. So I would like to hear you, Rolston, and all the other political candidates make a commitment in this particular area. Thank you, Sandra.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So Sandra, on page 5 of the manifesto, in the very middle of the page, I really covered the whole issue around. So if you look there, Sandra, you see where it says points allocation needs to be on actual training of Caymanians, on the job training, on the job, leading to permanent jobs, participation in real community involvement, such as Big Brothers, Big Sisters. So I just gave a flavor of what is in my head, but it strikes to the core of what that caller just said. Right now, and the walk the dogs is one that a lot of people do hone in on. But I tell you another one that's an interesting one. You just have to get a pastor to write you a letter and say that you come to church and you're a regular participant in their church, and you can get the 20 points. I don't have an issue with people going to church, but that shouldn't be a key part of any criteria for you to get permanent residence in the country. It should be about real Caymanian involvement with our youth, and I agree with that caller 100%. So that's
because let's be honest, a lot of these churches are not even Caymanian churches as such. So that is very, very interesting. And can I tell you, Rolston, if you mention Big Sisters, Big Brothers, you need to change the name because they're no longer Big Sisters, Big Brothers. Did you know that? Yeah, it's now called 1-to-1. They've lost the Big Brothers, Big Sisters affiliation.
There you go. Next digital copy, we'll have it changed, Sandra.
Yes, honey child. All right, got a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Hi, morning again. 2 calls in one day.
Yes, sir. First time caller. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. Okay, just to piggyback off the last caller, right? He mentioned about, having the volunteer, the charity work, being a part of the point system. But I'm of the opinion, which I'm actually working on comments to send to work on the transition paper, that even, yes, you should do charity and all that good stuff to acquire a permanent status, or permanent residency, but it should be mandated that you still contribute after the fact. So, but not just by a charity of your choice, a category of, a category that was approved and appointed by work themselves to ensure an even distribution of charitable work. So, for example, if, Sandra and I and Rolston has applied for permanent residency, we all got approved. One would, donate to some cause that, directly, the elderly. like Meals on Wheels, and I would do something that, benefiting to the children. Rolston would do something that's beneficial to animals. You know what I mean? So, because you what I've noticed over the years that you tend to have a lot more people donate into animal care, which is nothing's wrong with that. But then you have the other categories of charitable work that are being neglected. So, in my humble opinion, work should mandate, okay, as part of your permanent residency, this category is where you should be donating to, not only just monetary donations, but physical. So and of course, if you can't do a physical, work, then you shouldn't, then there's some exemption to that. But you should, be out there helping, going around in the community to help Meals on Wheels.
Can I throw something out there, caller? Because I have a thought on this, because I think I know what's going on, right? I think what you're essentially saying is you feel like there's an imbalance as it relates to the animal welfare versus the other charities involving children. I think what actually happened, I don't think there's actually an imbalance, I think what actually happens is that the animal charities, in particular the Humane Society, does a much better job of advocating and pushing stuff on social media and thanking their dog walkers. So you see that more, because I know, for example, with Meals on Wheels, I have a girlfriend who's from Jamaica, and every single Saturday, all day Saturday is her volunteer day. And she's out there, and she doesn't even have to do it because technically she works for government, but she really does enjoy it. The seniors enjoy seeing a regular face coming to their door, bringing them their soups and their meals, and she sits down and talks to them. So that's how for many years she's been giving back to the community. But Meals on Wheels doesn't tell you, or they don't show you who's out there delivering foods or who's out there helping there in the kitchen and that sort of thing. So I think it might actually come down to the fact that the animal welfare, and in particular the Humane Society, probably just does a better, if we can put it under the umbrella of marketing, even as it relates to the former Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I know people who were in the management of that organization who's like, Sandy, it's the expats who are acting as Big Brothers, Big Sisters a lot of times for our Caymanian young people. And so they're the ones picking them up, taking them to baseball on the weekends, taking them out for a little ice cream or whatever. But of course, again, because that charity is a little bit different involving children, they're not publicly out there saying who their volunteers are or anything like that. So I think that there's a couple things that might be going on. It's not that those charities, you look at charities like Rotary and all sorts of stuff, Rotary is probably largely expats. So it's not that they're not involved in other charities. I think maybe other charities don't market in the same way that the animal welfare charities do.
Could I interject and ask the caller a quick question? Because I made a quick note. Caller, are you suggesting that what we should do then in regulations, should we have a point system after having a comprehensive new immigration review post-election, that perhaps in regulations we put categories of types of community involvements and put what the max points are for each of those, to ensure that people are doing what a lot of us believe should be being done to actually earn the maximum points? In other words, I think what you're saying is, let's just say it's 20 points available. You shouldn't just be able to just walk dogs and get the 20 points. You want to have a system where at a minimum, you have to have what a lot of us consider much more real, impactful community involvement. So it would be, say, working with young people in an approved charity, and therefore that's how they would get, say, a max of 10 points. And that way you would really get the impact and integration that the caller before you spoke about. Would that be what you would be suggesting?
Yes, that's before achieving PR, but after the fact as well. Like it should be something that you're continuing, should be a stipulation that you can continue to have your permanent residency up until you reach the status,
Okay,
level.
got it. Okay, I've made that note. That's a very good suggestion.
Hire it.
Yes.
Keep it above.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? But
yes.
But also,
and of course, I'm sure the animal charities are listening this morning saying, listen, don't think that we don't need help just because we got dog walkers.
Sure.
We're always begging for assistance when we've got flooding and we need volunteers for, temporary homes and all sorts of stuff. So I think you might be going down a little bit of a slippery slope if you talk about pushing certain charities over other charities as more important.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that if it's mandated or if it's part of a mandate from work would ensure that, okay, we've issued 15 or 30, the PR, approved 30 PR applications this year. 10 will go to animals, 10 will go to elderly, 10 will go to 30. So you make sure that it's balanced across the board, is what I'm saying. And also, they don't have like that imbalance. Like I said, yes, animals are important. They likewise the children and the elderly as well. So you don't want that imbalance. And like you said, maybe they're not marketing it properly, but I know based on what I see on social media, there are people who are, often asking for donations for this child or this elderly, so clearly something is being neglected. Yes, the, Animal Humane Society often ask for help, but particularly I see, more people jumping to help the Humane Society versus helping an elderly.
I see. Children. I see. And then this is what happens like in those women's group of Cayman, for example, where someone puts up a post about a dog and the response that they get from the community is overwhelming. They put up a post about a Caymanian mother with 5 kids and the response is kind of lackluster. But I think, again, there are other reasons why that is happening. And unfortunately, the dog is seen as a completely innocent being, not out there having children simply because it wants to. It's because humans have neglected the animal population, whereas humans have a brain, they have a choice, and they have decisions that they can make in their own lives to either better or make their plight and life worse. So some people are not as sympathetic to humans for that reason. But thank you, caller, for those comments. We do have some other comments coming in, and I do want to pick up on a commenter here, which I think is very, very important. Alice Ramos, we don't see her often in the comment section, so big shout out to Alice. And I was thinking this before I saw her comment. Alice says, greater opportunities for Caymanians is linked to education. We need to fix this issue. So, of course, in Rolston's manifesto, he does have a whole section on education, but he wanted to start with immigration, which he says everything kind of comes back to and is intertwined with anyway. But to Alice's point, I never want to send out the message that as Caymanians, we have an entitlement just because we are Caymanians. We have an entitlement because we are Caymanians and we're qualified Caymanians. You understand what I'm saying? So we can't create the system. And when I was in South Africa late last year, for my annual vacation, I was listening to what the locals were saying and how they were interacting with what has happened since apartheid has ended. And one of the things that came across, and of course you take it with a grain of salt because it's the Afrikaners that are pushing this, but they're like, listen, now we have a system where you don't get a job because you're qualified and white. Let's throw that in there because that's what it used to be. White first, maybe qualified. But his perspective is now there's a lot of nepotism. You're getting it just because you are part of the Black African population. And they're not picking the most qualified of those. It's like who you know, if you're affiliated with whatever parties and et cetera, et cetera. So we have to be careful because we don't want a country ever where we have, even in MPs and leadership positions, where we have unqualified people coming in and getting the job. That's what I'm saying, right? We've got to, as Caymanians, commit ourselves to making sure that we are the best of the best. And we uplift ourselves and we try to uplift everyone around us by doing what we can do. All right, caller in the line. Good morning, caller, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sandy. Good morning. Morning, Rose.
Morning.
Morning. I have been listening to your immigration reform. I'm going to put you in the hot seat right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're pretty used to being put in the hot seat by
That's why he's in a cold hard truth, honey Chan.
No, I'm going to ask a very tough question. A question that's probably lingering in many, many people's minds. And can you give me a definitive answer because we certainly can't get any definitive answers from any of our sitting MPs. We are on the subject of immigration reform, correct? We're speaking about status holders. We're speaking of generational Caymanians. That's all good. My question is this. We have now had 2 incidents in 1 month of people that have status. The latest incident was yesterday, and they are status holders. Because, by the way,
day before yesterday. It happened day before yesterday.
Day before yesterday. And then, of course, we have the Alpers. What has to be done, and can it be done? And I have spoken to many other members, sitting MPs, who say it is impossible and it cannot be reversed. Can Caymanian status be reversed? And when I speak, I'm speaking especially of people like the Alpers and the 2 jokers that
Larry and Linda.
Now, Larry and Linda, right? Bo and Joe.
Mac Jean, to be clear. So the other Linda doesn't get offended.
No, I know who the other Linda is, and she does never and would never fit into that category. She's actually, I mean,
don't swear for nobody. Just leave that alone.
Well, okay, but the individuals that are in the video and the Alpers, Larry and Linda, they are all status holders. Because I'm not going to call them new Caymanians. I'm not going to insult my Caymanian people. What can be done, and is it true, from what I've been told from other MPs that I have spoken to, that Caymanian status cannot be revoked? Because in their case, it should be revoked.
So
I don't think there are any ifs or buts about that. Are there steps that can be taken if we petition for that to happen? Or once they're here, that's it, and they get status, then it doesn't really matter what they do. They can get away with anything. They can treat us the way that they do treat us, and they continue to live in the paradise and treat us as monkeys in the jungle.
All right. Leave us there. Honey Chow, we got the point. So in your manifesto, Rolston, is there anything that addresses this issue specifically about how to, somebody said, give that one a couple, how to revoke status a little bit easier than them having to be a straight up criminal that's been convicted?
No, I didn't have anything in there. I've made a note of that particular point. However, I don't know the legal status of the last couple. What I can say is that certainly,
I don't even think they have status, to be honest.
All persons should have to be subject to a revocation of anything that's granted. However, again, I would
make the revocation easier in a way, because it can be revoked in the current law, but it's only like if they commit a crime and they're sentenced over a year, and then we see even that has exceptions whereby people can if the wife, we've seen like real life cases where the stepfather, he's from Nicaragua or somewhere, molested the little child, and the wife was still arguing right to family life. And so therefore, she was thinking up, although he was sentenced to more than 12 months, she was throwing up a stink on why he should be able to remain in this jurisdiction. And to me, that's next level crazy.
Agreed.
So, yeah. All right, we got a caller in the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Sandra, and good morning, Mr. Anglin. Just before I make my very few points here, I just want to recall a moment when I came to Cayman around in 2003, and you were a young legislator then. And,
Thank you.
Yes, Sir Alden paid you the compliment to say, well, you disagreed with him on something. And then he praised you and said, he's so incisive. I wish he was on this side of the house rather than on the other side of the house. So now, you see,
I remember that.
Yeah, you do remember that. Yeah, it was a very good moment. You see, the problem in Cayman, I find, and I just want to make some general comments, and you can respond to them to the extent that you want to. I just find that, you see, in Cayman, part of the problem is brainwashing. There are people who've been brainwashed to think that if there's drastic immigration or job preferences reform, there will be something that will be negative which will happen. And to me, it takes me back to the time when the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, then as a backbencher, came in and brought a motion to say, hey, can we have in 5 years, the heads of department and the deputy heads of every institution in government should be Caymanian after 5 years. That motion was not passed. And there are two significant things that happened. One, the fact that it was not passed was significant to me because both the opposition and the government didn't support it, which I found to be very, very interesting. And then secondly, Gloria McField-Nixon, who was then acting governor, she said that if we were to give more preference than preferences that Caymanians had at the time, that those people who get jobs, Caymanians who get jobs, it will cheapen their jobs if we give them more preference. Now, to me, that's brainwashing, because all over the world, what they do is that if you qualify for the job and you are a local person, it doesn't matter whether you've got some professor from another part of the world who has got 4 times the qualifications. And to me, for somebody to buy into that thing that if you give greater preference, which they give similar to other countries, that somehow that will cheapen you, there the problem is brainwashing. There's also the issue of scare tactics. Or you see, if you introduce rollover in government, the government is going to collapse. And that's why the rollover policy, which had been announced as being introduced in government initially by Mr. McCarthy, it was withdrawn because somebody was able to put the scare tactics. But do you see 20 years later, it has now come back. And you see what has happened in the last 20 years. They had given, there were the mass grants which were given. By the way, everybody keeps saying Makiba Bush. No, they were given by the whole cabinet. And then having done that, then there was the withdrawal of the policy, which was not even implemented at the time, of rollover in government. Then when you put the two together, I think we are seeing the result of that today. Now, quickly, I see also there is a problem with the deputy governor. The deputy governor, I don't think, accepts the idea of giving Caymanians 2 preferences, because if he did, he could have just moved to amend Section 26 and 47 of the Public Service Management Law, and they would say, if a Caymanian qualifies for a job, they should be given the job, even if there's a foreigner who is better qualified. Instead, those 2 sections now just say, Caymanians will only be given preference if their qualifications are at roughly the same level. No, you have to amend that, and you need specifics in this matter rather than talking generally. Regulation 6 of the immigration law used to read that when you apply for a work permit, you will give a succession plan. Now it says may, okay? And then there's been a refusal to set targets, in government regarding how many Caymanians do you want by a certain year. In immigration, they are talking generally up to this day about, let's change immigration laws. But what are the targets you are going to meet, and what assurance do you have that these policies that you put, they are going to put in place, that they will meet those targets? And finally, Mr. Saunders, Chris Saunders gave some statistics on OC's show the other day, where he said that when he was in the government, he had moved to make it more strict to get work permits, and that he says that the employment rate in 1 year went down from 1,600 or so among Caymanians to about 800 or so. And as soon as he left, those numbers were...
I'm sorry, did anybody fact check that? What did he say he put in place?
He said, you see, what happened was he told the board, Richard Barton, Steve McField, and so on, to be more strict. He said that if a company appears not to give preference to Caymanians, he said that the way he put it at the time was that they should scrutinize a work permit much more strictly. And he said when they did that...
And the only way that we can obviously fact check that is to speak to a board member. So let's be careful during political season, just taking these people at their word about what they supposedly did, especially if there was no legislative change. And at the time, there was no public statement that he had done that, because neither one of those have occurred to the best of my knowledge. So coming in now during election season, claiming that that's what he did with the board, and I've never heard that, I'm a little bit suspect, because he has a tendency to not always tell the truth. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and you are right, Sandra, and that's why I mentioned that it was him who mentioned it, so that it can be fact-checked. At least it was something to go with from the very beginning. So if really that is the problem, let us imagine that he's telling the truth about that. Doesn't that reveal that there is a problem from within, that there are some people who within government do not want to do what all these callers are saying should be done? That should be my last point.
Yes.
I hope you can comment on some of it.
Yeah, we'll try to fact check that, because I think, again, suspicious. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Sandra. Well, you all fact check that. I want to go back to my manifesto and make sure that people get a very clear view of big picture how this all comes together. So I'm also proposing that for permanent residency and status through tenure, that we do implement an immediate transition law of freezing all applications for 24 months, that none will be granted, but we hear the applications that are in to date, along with implementing immediately our rollover. I don't think we have to debate whether or not there should be a rollover. Also, we ensure that any transition to the public sector is immediately cut off. Because if we have an immediate freeze on non-Caymanians other than critical services, so people like things like teachers and police, etc., which might need to happen during this time, all those administrative type posts that a lot of Caymanians can be taken up, we freeze it. And there need to be special exemption if they want to go beyond that. Because what we know happened 2 decades ago was when we put a hard rollover policy in place in 2004, there was a significant flight of persons from the private sector, non-Caymanians, who then went and got hired as government workers because government didn't have a rollover policy. And so I agree with that caller, because if you look on page 6 of my manifesto, I'm also saying for once and for all, we have to have a country of one system, one set of rules. No longer having this country, our country, being divided along private sector versus public sector. Because I agree with the caller completely. It was complete scaremongering to talk about that the public service is going to collapse if we implemented a rollover policy. What I'm suggesting we do is we have a national rollover policy for all persons. However, for the public sector, if an individual agency wants to have exemption, we would form a committee of the entire parliament, not just cabinet. Listen to me carefully on this, Sandra and Cayman. This would not be done in any secrecy and then a press release made afterwards by cabinet. They would have to come before a special committee consisting of the entire House. It would be chaired by whoever is the minister responsible for home affairs. Those heads of agencies would have to come before that committee, make their plea publicly. They are public servants. They're not elected, but they're public servants, and all of us have a duty of care to the people of this country, to Caymanians, for today and future generations. And so let's just use an example. Suppose the Ministry of Education was to make a plea that they wanted to have exemptions for a certain number of teachers, simply because we have, let's just say, 5 Caymanians returning on scholarship, but we need 10 teachers. So definitively, they would have to get an exemption to hire non-Caymanians at that time. I'm not suggesting we be so strict that we then truly cause the public service to be compromised, but they would have to come publicly, make their plea publicly, because the public has a right to know who we would be and what categories of persons we would be exempting from our rollover regime. I'm also suggesting, Sandra, that we move our eligibility for Caymanian status through marriage back to 15 years. You have to be married to a Caymanian for 15 years before you can get status, not the current 7 years.
I agree, Rolly. I agree.
All right, we've got a call on the line. Good morning.
Live and direct.
And we're going to be wrapping up after this caller as well, folks. Good morning, caller.
Okay. Good morning, caller. Rolly, this is Lisa. Good morning, Sandra and Rolly.
Morning.
I am proud of you. That's first thing. I'm also mad at you, as you know, but I also love you because you're my own. Raleigh, you have been one of the best ministers that we've had in education. God has given you a gift of education, and you must use it right. We're at the end. We're at the end road. Many people do not know while you were struggling and trying to take on the battle of this country and run it right, made mistakes along the way, but had great things along the way planned, that you were also fighting with your dear mom who was losing the battle. So many people did not know that, and you were castigated, you were said this and whatever, and that's all fine. But of course, there were other things that played out which didn't shine. People take death and sicknesses in different ways. And I just wanted to say to you, Raleigh, you have a second chance. You can stand on any platform with any leader of this world, and you can fight for Caymanians. We, for too long, have been left behind. I am going to be starting a registry soon, asking Caymanians to come forward to tell me how they were bullied, what names were said to them, the kind of things that they're going through, so that we will have some type of database to show you what we are going through. We now need a second-hand Trump. When I say that, we need leaders in there that are going to look to these people and say, laws are in place, or we have filed the laws to make sure that bullying and all of this stuff have to stop. It has to stop. Unfortunately, we have a lot of our own that are really, really not good people. And they have hid for a long time, and there's nothing being investigated about them. And let me tell you, I find that very hard to swallow, because whatever is good for the goose should also be good for the gander. 15 years is too short for Cayman status. What are these people really bringing to the table? They may come and invest here, but they've already told us we can't go back to the beaches. They've already told us that we can't come here, we can't buy in their development. Raleigh, what needs to happen is whatever land that we have left, Cayman Islands need to buy it and make sure that we build villages for our people first. If we're not going to do that, and the next thing you're not going to do is to lie about any more diseases, it's not going to happen on my watch. And as long as God gives me breath, no one is going to come up there and lie to my people and tell them to take something that was not meant for them to take. Raleigh, we need to secure the little bit of Caymanians we have left. Because let me tell you what happens with every foreigner that come in here. First, the wife comes or the husband comes. Then the wife comes. Then the children come. Then the auntie comes. Then the grandmother comes. Everybody else expects to come. And then our children coming home from school, which we are wasting money putting them through and educating them, have no stand. The civil service, the leaders of that, a lot of them needs to go, because they have not looked up for us. They have put people in places that look at us. Let me tell you, I cannot call names right now. I cannot tell you the departments right now, but what has happened to us is wrong. It is wrong. And Raleigh, we need people like you that can stand and say enough is enough. I think you, I think Catherine, I do believe Sabrina, I do believe Carmen, I do believe Dan. I'm not saying that Wayne wouldn't do it, but he's a much more mellow fellow. But I do think that people like you, even though Chris has his ways, but Chris is also very strong when he's standing and saying enough is enough and wanting to make things right. But 15 years is just too much. We can't
have Chris back in government.
I understand that. I understand. No, I know all of the history. I know all the history. I'm just saying the way that he can speak and stand.
Oh, okay.
I'm not talking about what we can't have. I know exactly what all of this is all about, and I'm not going there. I know everything about that. All I'm saying is that, Raleigh, I do believe that you have a gift. You can lead us if you stand strong. Stay away from the wrong company. But you are definitely someone that can lead us and bring us, because I do believe, I've seen you, I've seen your work. I have confidence in you in many things that you have done. And I do appreciate, I do appreciate all that you have done for this country and making sure. But came and say that? No. What are these people really bringing to the table except investing in our country? Years ago, we used to have people that when they came here, they were a part of our culture clubs. They were part of giving back, doing many things in society. And we're not having that anymore. We're only catering for a certain color, a certain type of people. No, that has to stop. It has to stop, because they're really not bringing anything to the table for us. Right. They're really not. And yes, whether we want to say it or not, it's too much racism going on in this country. I shared with Sandra last week some of the stuff I went through as a young girl at 16 years old with Sicko. And then Miss Joanne Wilson was the woman that stood up for the young women. Myself, Mr. Roy Bodden's sister Galfie that worked with me. Dr. Aileen Marin's daughter Paula. A lot of things that were being said to us. We were a common island people that had no common sense.
Yes.
And it just hurt me to the point that I had to go to the managing director and I asked that and I said, tell him that the young Caymanians do not need to be hearing this. The young women don't need to be disrespected. He looked at me and told me there was nothing he could do as the managing director. So I'm just saying, Raleigh, we have come so far in that 25, 30 years. And we need young men and young women now that are going to stand for our people and straighten up. Cayman status should never be given away again as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what you bring into the table and what you investing. It does not deserve to be given away. It must be earned. You must be a part of the society. You must be giving back to everything that is happening here. Let's take Anna for instance. 14 years this young lady's been missing on Crown property. And what have we done? We have turned our face up at her family because she's black, she's poor. We have not done what is correct in making sure that her children can be taken care of. Raleigh, you know that because your ministry was one of the ministries that advocated, selected, and raised money, raised so much food that we didn't even know where to put it. I thank you for everything that you have done. Many do not know what you have done for that particular family and many, but I want to say thank you, Raleigh. I want to say thank you. And all I'm saying to you is keep your face and your clean and your body clean. Let me tell you what, let me put it another way before you go. Where you go to the bathroom, you don't also eat. You should know what that means.
All right, we got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and take care.
Thanks. We have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning again. I like that idea of the last caller about a registry for people for Caymanians to maybe not call it a registry, but a way for them to express and give testimony as to the abuse that they're experiencing in the workplace under maybe expat workers. Yeah, I like that idea. That's a good idea.
I appreciate
to get good feedback and
Thank you so much. All right, Rolston, one suggestion I have that perhaps you can look at adding to your manifesto is one of the things that I think needs to be eliminated when, as it relates to immigration, when people are applying for PR, even status, they should not be able to rely on a reference from anyone who works with them in an employment situation, because what we have discovered is a lot of those Caymanians are being subjected to undue pressure in the workplace, in these law firms and these accounting firms, to give references to people that they don't even really know, right? They pre-write these reference letters in immigration. Oh, wow, this person is treating a Caymanian in the workplace. And all of that is a bold-faced lie. And then it's after they submit the reference that they find out that those people mean us no good. So that should not be, if you want a reference and if a reference can have any weight, it has to be someone outside of your work environment, outside of your workplace. It should not be a coworker who just happens to be a Caymanian, because again, they're abusing that system now as we know it. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, Sandra. Good morning, Rolston. I just wanted to ask a quick question, something that I've noticed that has become quite prevalent and I dare say dangerous. As the permit system that we currently have, a person can move to the country and have a certain amount of dependents depending on their salary bracket or the salary bracket that they fall in. What I see now is a growing number of persons coming here who are adults dependent on their spouse's work permit, dependent on their spouse's work permit. Now, when you take out that work permit, it is on the premise that that individual earns enough to support his household, that dependent or dependents. But what I'm seeing is a growing number of people who are moving here, and the day they land on the island, that dependent is listed and registered with every recruitment firm in this country and hops into a job within the next week and is on a permit within the next week. Do you think, or would you support changes to that part of the permit system that puts some sort of ban block? Do you think it's feasible? Do you think it's
absolutely
consider? Because I think that is a huge problem that we're having here, particularly with dependents. But I will leave you there and listen in.
Okay, thanks very
Yes.
much, Carl.
So two things I am proposing that you increase the monthly minimum earning to qualify to even add a dependent from the 3,500, which is completely outdated. And I'm suggesting $5,000 per month, and you add $1,000 for every dependent, whereas right now it's 3,500 plus 500, which I think is wholly inadequate. But yes, that loophole, that point is designed to close that loophole. And so certainly from my perspective, even if you have to specifically say it in the regulations that an adult cannot then add a spousal or boyfriend or whatever adult as a dependent for the purpose of them coming to live in Cayman. The fact of the matter is we can't continue to have that loophole, because not only are they coming in and then getting jobs, as the caller quite rightly said, but in some instances it's prearranged. It's prearranged. So that loophole has to be closed, and that's what's the intention of that particular point that I'm suggesting in the manifesto. I tell you another one that we need to close. That is persons who marry Caymanians and then get a residence and employment right certificate. We need to have it that it's clearly stated in legislation that has to be renewable, and that does not free them from immigration restriction and control, because they too are taking advantage of a loophole in that they are then going and getting registered as British citizens and then having to wait another 7 years to get Caymanian status. So we can't continue to have that, where a person can become naturalized and become a citizen and then later on acquire status. And so that again is what is being suggested in that proposed change that I have in the manifesto. Last, Sandra, I'm going to cover this very quickly, but there has to be a wholesale reform of the business staffing plan regime, and it has to start with technology. The government has got to invest in a proper database system that government rolls out, along with the private sector. So there has to be you have to take feedback to ensure that what's being implemented is feasible and will work and will be seamless. But right now, the transparency around those plans is extremely opaque, even for board members. And we have to ensure that anything that's in those plans is rigorously economically tested. Because the fact is, a number of those plans, I have heard some whispers on the street of entities putting in and saying that they're going to go from having 50 employees today, and in 5 years' time, they're going to have 500. Now, that is substantial growth over a very short period of time. And so we should not be approving plans that we don't believe is economically or socially feasible, because those plans should be about what we see as the correct and proper way to grow this island and grow this country. We can't have the private sector continue to dictate our growth, Sandra, and Caymanians. The Caymanian population, if we're going to take this work seriously. And I saw a caller or author who said, look, it's all great and fine for me to make these proposed changes. We are going to have a new immigration regime. I sat in the first IRT. I like many of the hundreds of callers who are either listening and the thousands who are going to listen afterwards, Sandra, we have children. And we have to do what is right today for our future generations. And that means we're going to have to take an extremely conservative and tough approach to immigration that is going to allow us to catch our collective breaths and be able to then sensibly administer our country. I do not subscribe to the scaremongering that's going to come along, because you're going to get it, Sandra. We're going to get scaremongering from the private sector. You're going to get those in Cayman Finance. And by the way, I happen to be a CPA who worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and that's where I had my scholarship. So I am not going to fall for any of the ploys that's going to come about with all the crocodile tears talking about how we're going to destroy the industry. We still have a good country, a good place for people to live, and no one is going to tell me that all of a sudden that Cayman is going to become so unattractive to young professionals who could come here for 7 years, where we still have a skills gap and we don't have enough Caymanians in certain areas. and be able to live, have their being, and then they have to leave. We also need to be very, very absolute and very clear about what this regime is going to look like and stick to it. We cannot have the government being browbeat by senior civil servants who are not going to want the policies and proposals that I have in here, or persons in the private sector who is not going to want it. And then we go through another decade, because the numbers are the numbers. The thousands of people who have been granted permanent residence and then graduate onto Caymanian status over the last decade makes all other grants pale in comparison by number. And that's just the facts. Those are the numbers that are out there. They're available in work. But from work, we've heard some of them, and it should be scary. It should scare us. So, Sandra, these proposals look very strict. They're going to look very aggressive to a lot of people. But if we have a problem and we're not willing to meet it head on and tackle it aggressively, then we might as well not even enter the fight and just say, you know what, throw hands up and we give up. We have a lot to fight for in this country, and we have to take a stance now. These elections is a clear crossroads for our country. It is no time for inexperienced people. It is no time for people who simply jump on a party bandwagon because they're going to be yes men to their leader. We have to have strong individuals who are going to put Cayman first and are going to follow through with what they say.
All right. There you have it, folks. West Bay North. Are you number one on the ballot? I guess with your last name, you will be.
You'll be number one.
Rolston Angin, folks.
Sandra, thanks for speaking that into existence, because that means I will be number one.
There you have it, Rolston Angin. I'm not putting my goat mouth, or the opposite of goat mouth, in anybody here this morning, but I often do a pretty good job of predicting certain things. I don't know if you guys remember last election, we were predicting based on the Gucci that would go by every time certain candidates were in the studio. I keep my windows closed now, so I don't see the Gucci anymore. But listen, let's just say that this time around, I'm basing it on more scientific reasons than the Gucci going by the door. So Rolston, thank you so much for coming on the program. We've got you penciled in for Fridays now. Every Friday leading up to the election, you will see Mr. Angin here. He got the full 2 hours today because nobody else wants to come on. So at the end of the day, what can I say? Kaboom to Rolston. He gets the time. So we do have other areas of his manifesto that next week we'll be looking into. Just a reminder, folks, if you're interested in getting more information, here's a QR code. Just scan that with your phone. Young Audacity says, I love you, leader. Doran Ebanks says, vote number one, the man to get it done. Rashana says, I can't cast my vote for Rolston on April the 30th, but of course, if she could, I guess she's saying that she would.
No, she said can't wait. She said can't wait.
Oh, she can't wait. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Can't wait to cast her vote. So she's in West Bay North?
Yes.
Oh, okay. My bad. Lisa Prendergast says, thanks, Rolly. Miss Nona says, yes. There will be more noise now. Nat B says, kaboom, every country needs to protect their immigration and border policies. Denny says, hashtag 2025 general elections, West Bay North in the house. Ms. Nona says, I say that all of the candidates looking to be elected in the should show up on Cayman Mall Road, show their faces.
There you go.
I mean,
well,
there's
an old Bob Marley song. They are tired to see my face, but they can't get me out of the race. And we will get this done. West Bay North, there's a new day. Vote number one, because we have a mission, and it is to save the good ship Cayman. We're at a crossroads, and we're going to get it done this time around.
All right. Ms. Jennifer says, thank you, Rolly, for giving us hope again. Yeah. Wow. Nat B says, close all those immigration loopholes. We're here for it. All right, folks. Let me just see. I think there was a few more questions. Let me just see anybody. I hate to leave anybody out. This person says, yes, that they support the loophole with the adult dependents, that some of them bypass the requirement by because they have different last names and they have professional degrees So they got one working with them. She came here first and then followed whilst her work permit was going through the process. So they come here on a vacation as a dependent, and then meanwhile they are looking for jobs. This this person saying numbers don't lie. We got 10 times more view than somebody else, another MP who was sitting at another station. What a hot mess. Let me see, honey child. Kaboom to that. All right. So yeah, lots of really, really interesting comments. This person said, what does Rolston think about increasing the time between PR and being able to apply for naturalization? Did you touch on that one?
No, because we don't control that, because that's controlled by the British Nationality Act. The British Nationality Act determines how long you must be without immigration restriction and control to then be eligible. Because remember, that is governed by the Governor's Office on behalf of the UK government. It is their nationality to give. We can grant Caymanian status. The Brits grant British citizenship, which is through naturalization, through the naturalization process.
Someone else says, please give Rolston my number. Another person says, thanks to Raleigh for the hope. If I could vote in North, that's where you are, right?
Yes, West Bay North.
I would vote for him. They said West, but I knew that wasn't right. However, hashtag one Caymanian. So he's in West Bay North, folks. Make sure you know. He's not in West. He's in West Bay North. All right. Somebody else asked for your manifesto. I sent that along. So lots of positive feedback here this morning. And so, you know, Rolston, I guess you just have to continue on the path that you're on, staying focused on the issues that people want to hear about. And we'll see you next week, Friday.
Okay.
Yeah,
One love to Cayman. Have a great weekend, everyone. Be safe. And Sandra, I would be remiss of me. 125 Hillendale Close in West Bay Gardens. That's where my next yard meeting and area meeting is going to be. The committee would kill me if I had gotten off the air and not made sure to remind persons who want to come out. And these meetings, Sandra, are simply put together to give me feedback. And so I get up and I speak for around 5-10 minutes max. Then I take audience questions and then one-on-one questions, because some people will feel confident enough to ask the question with 30, 40, 50 people there. There are others that will be a little more reserved and want to ask that question one-on-one. And so I invite all persons in West Bay North, but in particular the West Bay Gardens community at 125 Hillendale Close. That's Everton McHale's home. He's in his home up to us, his yard up to us for our next area social. I look forward to the collaboration. I look forward to the participation. Last week we had a great time when Mr. Dexter Ebanks received the first copy of the manifesto. And so now I encourage people to come out, get a copy of your manifesto, ask me the questions one-on-one so that we can have that interaction.
All right. And we have Mr. Henry Orman saying we'll make West Bay great again. Sophia says happy that he comes on, Sandy. And she says, Lord, they need one of him in town. Marissa says vote number 1 to get it done. Rolston Angin, I'm proud to be able to cast my vote for you. Mel, good morning, Mel. Says if you registered in West Bay Central, for example, are you able to vote for preferred candidate contending for West Bay West? No, Bobo. Wherever you registered is where you got to vote, Mel. That's why you got to make sure you registered in the right area so that you can vote in the area that you only get to vote where you're registered. Somebody else was mentioning too. They're like, oh man, I wish I lived in Rolston's area. They said they would gladly move if they can. So any questions or concerns, the QR code you can scan. Someone was asking the number that's on there. Is that your personal number or is that someone on your team that they're going to be reaching?
So the number on there is a number that we acquired. And if you look at it closely, it ends with 0 WBN. So that is going to be the campaign phone number. And God's willing, we're looking to be successful, and that will morph into what will be the constituency office's number. Yes.
Okay. All right. So Sophia says he speaks with sense and gives us better understanding. So talking about criminal activity in our country, we'll get into more details for sure about the proposals here. So 6:30 on Saturday at West Bay Gardens is his next community meeting. Nat B says we need 10 more like Rolston. So some very positive feedback for you here this morning. And also your dad hasn't been feeling well?
No.
Oh,
No, he
well, we're
hasn't.
sorry to
No,
hear
he
that.
hasn't. No,
Some
he
machines
this
censored.
this flu that's going around is really, really bad. In fact, a quick shout out to a couple of committee members who have come down with it. All of whom have had to wind up in the hospital, and unfortunately he had to be nebulized and given drip. It is a really, really bad flu that's going around. So certainly my dad and anyone else that's feeling the effects, certainly hope that they get a speedy recovery.
Yes. Miriam says we need Rolston's leadership again. Lonnie Tibbetts in the house says Rolston for premier. All right. So thank you guys so very much for all of the comments and questions. Some very, very positive and engaging feedback. Sue says, if I could vote for Rolston, I sure would. Thank you. So election. Faded Mary Jean, April the 30th. Mark it on your calendars from now, folks. It is a public holiday. You will have every opportunity to go out there and to cast your vote. Lots of people running. Some we have no clue who they are. A lot don't have a track record. They've never done anything in their lives. So I think it's important for you to look at the individual candidates, regardless of the parties. It's really going to come down to when you go in that booth, who do you think of the people there can actually assist in getting the job done, steering this good ship Cayman back to the positive direction that it should have been going all along. But young Jaron also has an opinion. He says, I can't wait for Mr. Rolston to be the next MP for my constituency, the right man for the job. May God bless you always. So hopefully, Jaron, you're registered to vote in West Bay North. And I must tell you,
he's a little too young to vote, actually. He's 17. So
he can't. But
he has a mom and a sister, so I know that he's encouraging others to vote for me. So he's doing he's a good young man.
He can't wait till the day he can vote. Okay.
Yes.
So and I got to tell you, your numbers were super strong this morning, up to 577 people listening on between the 3 social media platforms and countless more, no doubt, on the radio stream that went up until 9:30. So Rolston, thank you so much, and continued success and good luck on the campaign. I can see that you're definitely willing to put in the hard work.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, you and your family, Sandra.
All right. Thanks again. All right, folks. So there you have it. The reveal of the manifesto. We looked at some elements of it in relation to immigration. It's available online. I believe you can go to Rolston's website and also get an electronic copy of the manifesto. Like he said, he's going to be constantly updating it. It's a living, breathing document in that sense of the word. And so, there you go. Good show today. All right, let me see what else is going on. So I did mention early on, somebody says, I wish he ran with TCCP. Someone said earlier as well, and I think I was mentioning this, in fact, that the one candidate has dropped out. So listen, it is what it is. I do think that there's some candidates that are simply not worthy of your vote. Most candidates, I leave them alone to do their own thing and to sell themselves to the people of the Cayman Islands. But there are certain lines that once people have crossed, I'm going to be very, very vocal about those particular candidates. And right now there's a few of them, probably a handful. And unfortunately, Josh was one of them. And I told you guys what my issues were with him. I don't know Josh personally. I probably never even said 2 words to the young man. But I do know that he has a very, very serious reputation for putting his hands on women. And I think in this country, there's a lot that we still let slide and we still accept, including, men out there philandering and all this kind of stuff. These MPs need to scale back on that kind of foolishness as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I'll ignore that up to a point. I don't think it's right? And I speak out about it generally because the behavior needs to stop, right? But when it comes to physical violence, when it comes to sexual abuse, when it comes to sexual harassment, and rape and stuff like that of our people, that's a hard line for me. That's a hard red, bold line. Those are the candidates that can't come on this program. Those are the candidates that I can't support, and I don't care who they're running with, right? And so I want you to be very, very mindful of that. Like the caller was saying, oh, she likes Chris Saunders because he's passionate. Well, being passionate is one thing, and some people have the gift of gab, you see, and this is why I often tell you guys to please be extremely cautionary, exercise due caution. Just because someone can get on a public platform and sound good, that doesn't mean that they're the right person for the job. We've made that mistake before, electing talk show hosts because they sat there for years and sounded good. And then when they got into public office, we saw how easy it was for them to compromise their principles that they were talking about on radio for 5 years. They flip like how you flip a light switch, real easy. So it takes more than just sounding good. It takes more than sound bites. And so I understood the caller's point. And this is where, as the electorate now, you guys have to be willing to scratch beyond the surface. Because you know what fake gold looks like? Have you guys ever seen the gold plated? After a while, the gold plated part starts to rub off and you see the seriousness of what's underneath it. That's this part that's going to turn your skin all black and make you, I can't wear fake jewelry, but I'm just saying, I know what it does to you. It makes your neck all black and, puts marks on you and whatever, that fades. So don't fall for the sound bites and they sound good. I know as a human being that it helps when someone is passionate and they sound good. It's so funny what she said. Oh, Ween is a little bit soft, but listen, when Ween got hard with you guys in that episode with Kenneth, honey child, y'all were like, oh, Mr. Panton brought it today. My phone was blowing up all day long. Now, that's not maybe how he is 80% of the time. That's not how he naturally is. And he has to be in a particular mood to bring it to that level, and I think everybody's different and how they present themselves and how they speak. That is one element of whether or not someone is convincing. But don't let it be the only thing that you conclude whether or not someone can actually do the job. Actions speak louder than words. So let a man, and when I say man, I'm including women, let a man stand on his or her track record of accomplishments. And so that is important, right? So, take those things with a grain of salt, and the people who've been in your community and who've been out there working on your behalf. And as they seek to get your vote, just keep all of those things in mind. Miss Joyce Ann, where you were this morning, honey child? We missed you. Mm-hmm. So Ms. Pat says, this is what we're expecting from all the candidates. Show up for the interviews by us, the people. Come ready, politicians. It's a new day in politics for the Cayman Islands. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Pat. And I must say as well that we do have the chamber debates coming up. So it's important now. And I think you guys kind of voted. I was thinking maybe we would share the debates during the show. And you said, no, Sandy, just kind of do highlights. And that's fine. We can do the highlights and discuss them maybe the night after. But when they air in the evenings, we'll give you plenty notice. We will advertise them so that you can tune in to those debates. I know they're going to have the leaders of the parties debating as well as then the individual candidates. So they're doing it a little bit different this time because we actually have more than one party for change. So make sure that you tune in for that. And it is very, very, very important that you listen carefully to your candidates. Because listen, as equally as you might be impressed by a candidate who can bring it and sound eloquent and sound good, you're equally not impressed by a candidate who can't string two words together and who can't speak. They could be the sharpest otherwise in the toolbox, but if they cannot speak, if they cannot communicate their ideas, they've lost the vote. So word of caution to the candidates, come prepared. Do your homework, practice. I know it's not easy getting up in front of people and speaking. Some of y'all think it's a natural gift. I'm telling you, it's not. It is something that you can develop over time, but you have got to put in the work. So as a candidate, whether you're an independent or part of a party, hopefully you've got people around you who are willing to be honest with you about what your strengths and weaknesses are. And if you are a weak public speaker, if you're weak at debating and answering questions, you have got to find people who can sit down with you, and they're professionals who do this for a living, who can sit down with you, my apologies, and make you practice. I've done this with friends before. They were going for job interviews back in the day, young Caymanians, and they said, oh, Sandy, I'm so scared. I'm going to mess up in the interview. And I said, honey, child, come over to my apartment back in the day, sit down with me, and let's do some mock interviews. I'm going to ask you interview questions, and you're going to answer. And then afterwards, we're going to review what you could have said differently, how you could have addressed this question. Because you kind of know the questions that are coming. You got to practice and you have to prepare. So there is something to be said, as Ms. Pat said, for preparation. Candidates, come ready, come prepared. It's on you. You are applying for the job. Okay? You're not going to get the job just because you're a Caymanian. You're not getting a job just because your mama was involved in politics or auntie so-and-so was involved in politics. We don't really care who you for no more when it comes to getting this job. You better come prepared. And we want some real solutions, not just telling us what the problems are, because even my dog Zeus can tell you what the problems are. Everybody doesn't know what the problems are. Come with your manifesto. Look at it. Look, honey child. Manifesto in hand. Okay? Be prepared. This is a document that has a lot in it. He has his little message. These are the key areas: immigration, housing, cost of living in the economy, education and human capital reform, West Bay District Councils, the constituency office and services, supporting your families, inclusion for all, preserving our environment and the Barker's plan, expanding our infrastructure, other policies. We want to see that you have given some thought to some of these issues, very, very important issues facing the people of the Cayman Islands. And anybody who comes talking this foolishness about they're not prepared, right, to publish a manifesto before a certain date or before nomination date or this and that because they don't want people stealing ideas, y'all are clueless with a capital C and the LESS. You coming in with less. Come on now. It's ridiculous. Y'all are not tuned into the people. And the people are here every single morning and they talk to me off air and I listen to what the people have to say. This is child's play when you guys take this approach. We want the best candidates to do the job. Absolutely. And it's time now that we say enough of this foolishness about you're going to dictate to us that you're not even going to properly apply for the job. You're not going to do the homework because, oh, I don't want nobody stealing my ideas. Right. Honey child, that ain't gonna cut it. All right. That's right, Andrew. We've already talked about this, that character matters. And thank you as well to Gabby, who also mentioned, of course, that there's the one candidate there, Leon Gold. He seems like he's going to go forward with his campaign, despite the fact that he really shouldn't, knowing what we know about him and the accusations that lots of women have about him. Leon Gold should take several seats and not waste his $1,000. But the government needs the money, and he looks like he's headstrong. If one thing I can see about Leon, he's not going to listen to nobody. And that's not really a trait we want an MP anyway, but he's one of those people. And so he's not going to believe us when we say that he's not getting no votes down in Red Bay. All right, honey child. Take it from Auntie. I know a thing or two. Anyway, please have a safe weekend. Let me give a big shout out to the Caymankind Action Committee. We had a really, really lovely time. And I must say that, fantastic opportunity for me to serve my community. And Miss Ramelia, thank you so much. She was telling me, one of the gentlemen, one of the seniors yesterday said, oh my gosh, this is the first time. He was asking what was the occasion because no one has ever brought them food before. Normally the seniors themselves will cook and bring food and that sort of thing. And so he was quite surprised that somebody cooked for them. I said, really? Aw, that saddened me to hear that. I was like, no, honey child, if one thing I love to do is cook, it's just a matter of time. I don't have the time that I used to anymore to cook like how I used to throw down. But I love to feed people. To me, that's my love language. Making sure y'all got a belly full, honey child, is my love language. I wish I could do a what do you call it? One of these kitchens, one of the soup kitchens, right? I would love to do that. If I had the time, I'd be practicing all these cottage cheese dishes. I'm going to tell you about that later on. There's a whole thing with cottage cheese dishes right now where you can apparently make anything with cottage cheese, and it's a great source of protein, and it's low fat, so it's actually quite good for you. But anywho, I'm going to be trying a few dishes. But listen, we had lots of food, and it was so delicious. I sat down and break bread too, had a little plate by myself, and I made sure I started the meal with a big plate of chicken. Big shout out to Susan Young. She did a papaya cake and some banana bread. And I did some brownies. We had rice and beans. We had white rice. We had brownies. We had chicken and fish. What else we had, honey child? It was all good. Potato salad. What else was on the menu? Anyway, it was a full menu. And I can tell you the seniors seemed to have really enjoyed it. Nobody had an empty plate at the end of it. And that was my only full meal for the day. Because after that, I was like, ooh, my belly full, honey child. I can't eat no more. You know what was so funny is there were people calling me before I went saying, wait a minute, I heard you talking about this food. Are you delivering food? And I said, I had to chuckle. I said, no, I didn't say I was delivering food. I said, and big shout out to Alric. Alric showed up as well to support the seniors and sit down and have a little lunch. But no, I wasn't delivering food. I was actually, I was delivering food to them, not generally speaking, I should say. So some of the fresh apple juice spilled in my car. I was so upset that they didn't all get to try the apple juice. But anyway, they had juice. And so, yeah, we had a nice salad for them. Oh my God, the food was off the chain. The food was delicious, really, really good. And thanks to all of the ladies who volunteer and they serve the seniors. And, there was something, I think, on that plate for everyone. And of course, the brownies did not last. I made some coconut ones and the regular ones with the nuts, and they were delicious. I didn't have any dessert. I was good. I did not eat any brownies. I didn't eat any cake because, I'm watching those sweets. But anyway, I absolutely enjoyed it. So I have committed as just being a member of this community for no other reason than I can. I'm in such a fortunate position that I can give back to the community, the very community that I have come from. I'm a Georgetown Central born Caymanian. I was born right there next to the hospital, Middle Road. That's my stomping grounds before I left Cayman to go to the States. And so, I was just happy to be in a position where financially and in resources, yes, Miss Stacy was there helping out, honey child. She's actually a really good cook. She loves, I got to tell her, cut back on those. I might tell her yesterday. I said, don't put any pimento in this because them poor people might choke on one of your pimentos, girl, because she loved a pimento in her cooking. And we always have fresh scallions growing in my outdoor garden. So we're able to use those in the cooking and stuff all the time. So big shout out to her for assisting, because after I got off the show, I ran in the kitchen. She already had my noodles prepped. I just did the sauce for the mac and cheese, did my brownies, did my rolls, so she was definitely assisting with some of the items and the food prep and stuff. So big shout out to her as well. And so, it's nice. I've committed to them because Ms. Amelia said nobody else has ever volunteered to give them food. And so I have said that I'm going to do that once a month. I don't want to wear myself out, knowing my schedule, but I think once a month is doable. So yes, I will be there once a month, and every time we can change up the menu. I love to cook different things, not always just what Caymanians love to eat. Child, I make a mean lasagna, some pasta dishes. We gotta be hooking them up with all kind of stuff. Oh yeah, some pasta and garlic rolls. We can do that for them. All sorts of fun stuff. I'm gonna try out new desserts on them. They're gonna love. Ooh, I tell them take your sugar tablet before you have lunch when we bring it, because I always want to take them a little dessert, something a little sweet. All right, folks, have a safe weekend. It is Friday. We're coming into, I can't believe it now, coming up shortly into the final week here. Next week, Friday, is the last day of the month, the 28th. February does not have 30 or 31 days. And so one more week in February, and of course, March and April, you will see a few more candidates here. Not as many as you want, I can tell you that from now, but you know, what can you say? Nothing I can do but that, honey child. Young Audacity having a good laugh. No, those were Miss Debbie Star Apples. No, those are the let me make sure I get it pronounced right now. The Tahiti apples. Is that the same thing as star apples? But I think the apple tree finished now, you know, between the birds, the iguanas, and ourselves making all that juice. I don't think we have any left on the tree. But next time, there's some on the tree. And some of you asked for the seeds, and I took them. You need to get your seeds. But next time they start to bear, I don't even know how often the tree's gonna bear. But I'll let you know, Miss Debbie, the next time there's some apples on it. So Phineas says, I'm gonna start stocking your house. I need 2 of those brownies. You don't have to stalk me to get them. I'm probably going to make some more this weekend, and just message me on WhatsApp and I'll make sure that you get some of those. All right. Very good. In terms of the, just a quick point in terms of Linda and Larry McGeen, the police disappointed me yesterday. They're wanting. Let me just say that, right? Absolutely ridiculous that they totally arrested the wrong person. And then no apology came. Instead, they issued a press release claiming that they need witnesses to come forward. Y'all are a bunch of jokers, straight up. You had witnesses at the actual location. We saw the video of the young man. It's like, miss, I saw what happened. Why aren't you arresting him? Because he was choking out this 17-year-old child. But all I can tell y'all mess with the wrong 17-year-old child. Because next week, Saturday, not tomorrow, because we have a couple things going on, but next week, Saturday, we intend to protest against Larry and Linda. So stay tuned for details of that protest. And y'all can call us whatever you want. Makiva Bush, you try and hush your mouth, because if you tell us one more time that we're troublemakers, I might find my kung fu fighting, as Graham said yesterday. How does the song go? Kung fu fighting. Yeah, we're going to be kung fu fighting in the streets where there are protest signs. So we're not paying you no mind whatsoever. Oh, listen to this. My husband said if your love language is cooking, must send on some food because his love language is eating. Oh my God. What a hot mess. Yes, sir. That's where it's at, honey child. Yeah, man, I love to cook. If I show y'all the before and after pictures with Marlon, y'all be like, oh, yeah, Marlon used to be like this skinny. Like he's still skinny, but he's not that skinny no more. The cheeks have gotten chubbier and stuff. That little belly. Yeah, boy, he used to be real skinny. And now look at him. Got that dad bod. Gabby says, I need some brownies as well. And this world famous mac and cheese, girl. I tell you. The secret to the mac and cheese is the amount of cheese I put in it. Gourmet cheese. Oh, I use the good cheese. All sorts of different cheese, like 5 different cheeses. And then you got to season your mac and cheese. So my mac and cheese just isn't cheese and noodles. I put seasoning in it. It's tasting good. Sometimes I even spice it up. Like I make it spicy. Throw a couple jalapenos in there, honey child. You be like, oh, shoot, that mac and cheese be popping. Love the kitchen life. All right, folks. Oh, yes, here was the menu yesterday. Yep. Looking good. We had veggies, brownies. The fish was more like a coconut fish. We should have renamed that. It was off the chain good. Oh, my God. I had a plate, and I was like, This food is delicious, if I might say so myself. I love you guys so much. Strong Will said, you catch Marlon, but you're cooking. Well, I don't know. You know what? You might be right, because the first time he came over, he had some spaghetti, and it come like he never wanted to leave after that spaghetti. So that's entirely possible, honey child. He's like, ooh, she can cook good. Anyway, Abby says seasoning and mac and cheese. I need to try that. Yes, girl. Don't make mac and cheese bland. You gotta throw some seasoning in there. Oh yeah, girl, please. That mac and cheese be looking divine. Y'all don't know the secrets. Oh my goodness. My cooking show coming in 2025. Big shout outs to I got some fun recipes that we got to kick off here soon. You know what? I'm gonna start recording my cooking show this weekend. Like seriously. All right, folks. Be good or be good at it. I don't know how you want to do that, but please have a safe weekend. Can I beg y'all don't drink and drive? Call a taxi. Call a friend who's sober. Don't drink and drive. It's a recipe for disaster. And we want you guys to live. We got so much to live for, right? All right. See you on Monday.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels and visit CaymanMarlRoad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.